Yeah, let's do that, but I'm going to take care of this. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday afternoon meeting of the VOCC. We have things on the agenda, obviously, today that has brought some people in, but there's a couple items I think we need to take care of right away. One is yesterday, and we did this all independently, we signed a emergency order. We were called from Larry and our public works because of the flooding issues. So we signed an emergency declaration today that allows the county to give out sandbags and different things. So I think this will be on a consent agenda next week, but we should probably motion and approve this thing. If you two are okay with that, you signed it, so I'm assuming you are.
I'll move we adopt the emergency declaration for severe weather events.
We got a motion to adopt the resolution. Comments? See none, see no hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Also vote aye. Thank you. And Commissioner Weber's going to take a couple minutes. He was working with Development Council yesterday out at the old Reynolds plant.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that opportunity. You know, for many years, we've been trying to be as helpful as we can to try to bring jobs into that former Reynolds aluminum plant. If you've been by that plant site, you'll see that it's totally different. They've torn down nearly all of the buildings. The old pot lines are gone, and they're rehabilitating it, which makes it an ideal site for new development that can tie in, take advantage of what happens to be an intersection of electrical power. That power grid is still there, as well as nearby industries have natural gas. And of course, being in the Columbia River Valley, there's a possibility for other kinds of energy manufacturing. So at any rate, yesterday there was a workshop held at the old Reynolds office building with invited parties through the sponsorship of the Cowlitz Economic Development Council, listening to a consulting group from Denmark who has built basically an industrial park, which they label as a symbiotic industrial energy park. And the symbiosis is to take companies that have as part of their production process the release of energy, oftentimes in the form of steam going up into the atmosphere, or other byproducts, which the forest products industry has plenty of, and to take those byproducts and put them to use, better uses elsewhere. And the idea is to have this as a center of a number of these small scale businesses to try to complete the cycle of energy to waste, to conversion, to useful activities. There's quite a bit of interest in that. Of course, the devil is always in the details and how you can get those alignments. But there were representatives from most of the major industries in the area who are also looking at ways to try to take advantage of what is now wasted energy. The steam clouds that come out of every one of the mills is an example of the wasted energy. And if there are ways to try to hang on to that or process it, that's what they're going to be looking at. The legislature actually recently returned from a trip to Denmark where there were about 38 of them, 18 Democrats and 18 Republicans, 36, I guess that's. And they came back really excited about the possibility of introducing that kind of a concept in Washington state. And they said with Republicans and Democrats, almost in unanimity, which is not very often happening, they said, we want a pilot program east of the mountains and west of the mountains. East of the mountains was easy. Pasco, the center of agricultural production, and there's a lot of food waste and all that. West of the mountain was a little bit more competitive, but they said forest products industry is kind of the key to this energy park concept. And we were the Longview site, Reynolds site, was selected as the west side location, beating out Clallam County and Everett. So the next step really is to try to put together a funding program to do a sort of a master plan to see what it looks like. And the Alcoa, who currently owns that property, has some property. A little bit of that property is inside the Longview city limits, but the vast amount of those 500 acres is in Cowlitz County. And Alcoa wants to keep it intact rather than parceling it out and making a whole bunch of different business activities. They want to keep it as an industrial park to try to further that whole concept of taking advantage of the production and the production wastes and recycling. So no businesses have been announced or anything like that, but it was a pretty interesting concept. Like I said, devil's always in the details, and it's similar to what we're hoping to be able to do with Cowlitz PUD with the methane that is produced up at the headquarters landfill. So it's right in line with that. One of the interesting participants was the business manager from the Cowlitz tribe. They are very interested in making investments because it is in alignment with their culture of, recognizing the importance of nature in the cycle of everything. So some interesting discussions, and the legislators are willing to provide some initial funding for the master planning. So thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Mortensen, for allowing me to represent the county over there.
You can reciprocate if you let me ask you a question.
I don't know if I can answer it, but we'll try.
Oh, it's easy. You mentioned a funding program. Is there an expected ask of the government or the county?
So you're right. In fact, sometime today, Ted Sprague, who's the executive director of the Economic Development Council, did have a meeting with legislators, and it's in their bailiwick. So they're the ones that are involved in that.
Okay. Thank you.
You need to get signed in.
And I'm not signed in yet.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move right in. It probably could be a day today. So Gina?
Okay, thank you. Gina James, Health and Human Services. I think first up, we have Community House on Broadway. So just to kind of recap a little bit, we last spring issued a request for proposals with document recording fees. Community House had submitted a response to that request, requesting for some funding to support a new project they started to develop a youth shelter or youth care facility. Before the county made any awards, they received a grant from the state to support the project as well. So the board decided at that time to allow that grant to be implemented and revisit down the road. So we had Community House came back a couple weeks, maybe a month, 2 months ago, a while back, and to give kind of an update on the project. So we're back again today for a further update, and I'll invite Frank Morrison, the director, to come up and share. And yeah, that's fine.
I do. I believe we do.
You're talking about this.
That we don't have.
Looks like you're getting along better, my friend.
How's your hip doing? Is your hip doing well?
Looks like you're getting along much better.
Yeah, my hip's doing great.
Yeah.
It's doing really good. Thank you.
Can
Can we pass these out?
absolutely, Frank. Yeah. Yeah.
And Frank, is this a particularly noteworthy day for you?
Were you at Rotary?
Are you having a
Yeah.
birthday or something?
Yeah, I turned 60 today.
Well, okay.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Hey.
And you chose to celebrate it with us?
Yeah.
Something wrong, something
Arranged.
wrong with you, my friend.
So here you have the original application. I just wanted to point out. We had done that and we did it at the startup project. Cost was 8.163443. So 8.1 million, it states right here on the original application and the response to the RFP. All right, and so I just wanted you to look at that. I don't know if you went through that. But here is the outline I'd like to go by today in the booklet.
Sure.
So you can see there's an index.
Oh,
And some.
Frank, can you make sure the light's on your
Oh,
microphone?
it's not even on?
Should be a green light there.
Oh, sorry about that.
Now you can hear yourself.
Okay, do you guys need me to start over or no?
You're good.
You heard the 8.1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. I brought our board members and some of the key team players today. I'll introduce them a little later, but briefly. And I wanted them to be a part of this because I know one of the concerns was a succession plan. My board has had me working on that, both boards. Because I turned 60 today, maybe 5 more years, but we'll see how things go along. I keep on developing these things. I don't know if I'll ever get retired, but our team is comprised of, you can see that I'm the CEO and the founder of Core Health, but I'm also the executive director of Community House on Broadway. Jordan Wisdom, could you stand? Jordan Wisdom is our Chief Operating Officer for Core Health. Katie Allen, she's our Chief Clinical Officer for Core Health. And so that you know, Katie, she's actually planted at our Chess location, Community House Extended Support Services. But she oversees all of the mental health staff clinically. Jordan sees it operationally. And then we've got, I'm going to introduce Brianna Hall. Go ahead and stand up, Brianna Hall. She's our psychiatric nurse practitioner. Brady Backstrom, please stand. Brady is doing operations at the youth center and kind of getting him acclimated, as you'd say. And then who we got? Tara Fennell. Tara is actually my right-hand person for Community House on Broadway. She's a great shepherd, and she does great with the clients and great with the staff. And Marty Garcia, please stand. Marty Garcia is the newest addition to Core Health, but she will be overseeing the operations or the clinical staff at the youth shelter. What's unique about Marty is that she recently just came up here from Texas because she was down in Texas for the last 3 years, putting together the largest youth shelter in the nation to capture the immigration over the border. There was literally, she has a site for 15,000 kids. It's at an army base out in the desert, and they're in tents. But she was a part of the assimilation all the way up through policies and procedures and medical processes and everything else. And she has her master's in counseling. So we're excited to have her come aboard. It's very exciting to have her. And then Hannah Morrison, she's one of my daughters, but she's a MSW licensed, and she's our Chief Compliance Officer. Now, organization, I don't know how much I have to go over there. A lot of you know, Community House started out in 1988. We do about 600 folks a year. Usually around 70% of the families enter into stable housing. Individuals, it's a little bit less. I think it's because they probably don't have the incentive and the support as much as families do. And most of the families are single moms. You could see one thing I do want to pay attention to is the revenue cycle. You could see the revenue of our organization, 46% of the individuals donate, and that's where our funding comes from. And that's on page 4 on the organization. So 46% comes from individuals, 2% from churches. Cowlitz County did 11% last year. This is 2022, so that you know. And then we've got grants and we've got facility leasing. That's kind of a new one, the facility leasing. And at the youth shelter, so that you know, we have the front 6,000, now it was a 29,000 square foot building, right? So the front 6,000 is the social support center, Core Health is leasing. So there's some operating costs under facility leasing. On the farthest side, we have Mackin's Auto Body Shop. They're leasing, they got a 5-year lease. And they actually said they'd hire some of our kids to work there at the body shop. Whatever they do, you know, I'm not sure what the actual training will be, but they'll be working and making money. And then there's 18,000 square feet that is going to be sliced out. There's the restaurant, the Carriage, which is, we're negotiating with them. We just got done with the negotiations. They'll be moving out. But that's where the training center will be. On that ground floor, right across from them, is going to be a lounge. It's going to be kind of like an activity center. So it's kind of built within so that they can have a common area together. And it could be kind of a little bit of a mini rec center so that they can hang out together, because upstairs, there's 6,000 square feet. That'll be for the girls. There's 12 rooms individual. There's 4 bathrooms separate with showers, and they're handicap accessible. And then the guys' side is another 6,000 square feet for 12 more rooms. And this you'll see on the facility design on the next page there on page 6. You know, I know we talked a little bit, just to back up just a hair on that page before, community needs. One of the things I did send to you guys, and a whole bunch of people I sent this to, because it was kind of an aha moment for me. You kind of assume that most people struggle with addiction. They usually start maybe when they're younger, but we really never tidied it in to figure out exactly when. Well, we did a survey for 110 of our adults. The average age of startup for drugs was 13. And they had a 60 on the family use, families using, their family use was about 65%. Now, you could see what they used was meth and alcohol is the predominant ones that the adults do. Then, like I said, that was around 110 adults that we surveyed that we have in intensive outpatient. The youth, however, on the youth, we have, once again, about 42 youth, 80% of them, I should say 78%, their families use. So more than likely, they're getting it around their cousins or their brothers or their sisters or their parents. And it's a very dysfunctional situation. Average age of startup is 11 years old. And I'm telling you, there's people 6 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. You wouldn't believe it, but it's true. The predominant drug that the youth start out with is cannabis. Yesterday, and I don't know if you're, yesterday, there was a media post by Jay Inslee. Actually, it was Tuesday and or Monday, I mean. We had one of our guys that has recovered. He was 42 years in addiction. His name was James Robbins. He started at 10 years old drinking. One of the key things he said was, I started using alcohol at 10. And once you do that, anything's on. And you talk about gateway drugs, you know, all that kind of theory. But the reality is your decisions are skewed. Your brain is malfunctioning. You're derailing your brain. And so he went on to progress to harder stuff at 14 and 17. And so we're talking 42 years, 38 years of marriage, alcohol. And he goes to community house on January 9th, 2019. And you can see the post. I don't know if you've seen it. I might have forwarded it to some of you, but they didn't give the full detail. But we do help people physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You know, we don't proselytize, even though Community House is a Christian organization. We show his kindness and we live out the love. And if someone wants to pray, it's a client-centered, we pray with them. Because it does show in psychology, and I've talked to Mark Bollinger about this, and about, hey, can you pray with clients and stuff like that? He said, yes, it's just got to be client-centered, and you just don't proselytize. So all that to be said, the community need, you could see that the adults here, when you look at those ages of the adults, 60 years old, 65, 30, 40, 50, you're talking, when they started their teenage years, we're talking derailing for the next 10, 20, 30 years, maybe even 40, like James. The collateral damage from that is incalculable. It's not a simple mathematic formula to figure out if you curtail and you nip this off from being 10, 20, 30, 40 years of addiction, and you get rid of unwanted pregnancies, you get rid of starting in the institutions and becoming, institutionalized. And there is such a ramification there. So the investment here for our youth is going to be critically important. I was just at Rotary. Mark Schmutz did a presentation on Uganda. And I was there. It started out in 2003 when we started going there. And there was 22 million people in the country. And it was the youngest population for a country on earth. Now, 15 or 20 years later, it's 44.7 million. So the average age of 15 back then, they're the adults now. And so they've got all the electricity up north and they're getting all these things that the Western civilization gets. However, there was a lot of nurturing that whole population of AIDS took them out. Drugs is taking out a whole population of parenting. The largest population of families, once again, is single moms coming into the shelter. So community need right now, there, like a month ago, we did a survey with just 3 school districts, Kelso, Longview, and Castle Rock, and there was 106 total that had unaccompanied youth. That's unaccompanied youth. That's the target we're looking at. So the design, let's flip ahead. Facility design, 18,000 square feet. It's a beautiful, actually, you can see the roof. You can see the roof on the floor too. Second floor plan, you see that? It's a beautiful white roof, all new, $600,000. You know why? Davis-Bacon. Davis-Bacon adds a tremendous amount of money to what has to be done. And you got taxes and et cetera. So, but now we have no leaks. Dennis, go ahead.
Davis-Bacon refers to the required the payment of prevailing wages.
Yep, the
So
highest
you can't
prevailing
negotiate
wage.
lower prices. It's
Yeah.
set by the prevailing wage.
Yep.
So that does drive up, and we've
Oh.
we've heard stories about that driving up the cost of quote affordable housing by 25 to 30%.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys have had jobs where it almost doubles. So, but there is, nonetheless, that's, the state is helping us and we appreciate the county that's opening to helping us as well. The staffing plan, you can see that we're going to have the executive director. Now, keep in mind, I'm the executive director now, but we've got people that I'm leading into this location of occupation that are in their 20s and 30s. And we're planning for institutional knowledge. I like these young people to learn. Young people, that's so stupid, isn't it? Arn, you're probably what? Older than 60, I'm sure.
I am 75.
75. So 60 is not that long. But we're going to have on-site program manager, and that will be Marty Garcia. Case managers, director care over staff. And so there's going to be a strategic way to do this. Now, keep in mind, and I think Gina's aware of this, the insurance companies, they do fund housing, supportive employment. So case management ends up being a lot of planning. However, it can be funded by the insurance companies because it's reimbursable for supportive housing, supportive employment from 16 years old on up. The facility intake, we're going to have an intake into the facility. There's two different intakes. The intake is to, and I like this, the WAC allows us to choose who is a good fit. If you were talking about violent offenders possibly, or sex offenders, they give us the local autonomy to say, no, that's not permitted in the WAC. And so, and even when we exit people, we'll have people that are exiting that say, I'm going to sue you, and you're living here for free. You're coming to us voluntarily to be a part of our program. Now, being a part of our program, I talked to Stephen Maherg, Mark Bollinger. Some of you know who they are. They're highly credible in my mind. I asked them, can we mandate assessments? They said, absolutely. When they're voluntarily coming to you, then you can mandate that they get an assessment for mental health or chemical dependency. Now, the question becomes, can you force them to follow the treatment plans if they do qualify? That's the whole thing. Now, we see that like 80% of the people that do follow the programs, they exit into stable housing. The 20% that don't, there's maybe 5% that actually exit into stable housing. The rest, they either leave or they fall off. And so that's how that'll happen. There's enough kids to go around. Now, this brings up the addiction. This brings up education. This brings up mental health. This brings up the different areas of coverage on service planning on page 9. And you've got the legal status. We're going to have to figure out when we get these kids, there's going to be just conflict resolution. There's going to be situations where there's a fight in the house and they need a de-escalation, calm down period. Maybe they need a couple of months. Maybe they need a couple of weeks. Maybe they need a couple of days. But we have the counselors on spot because we're teaming with Core Health. It could be easily teamed with, Columbia Wellness or CIHS or any one of those outfits. We work together on different projects. CIHS, Columbia Wellness do the WISE program. We don't. So the level 4s, we have them do. Detox, we have Columbia Wellness do. Crisis stuff, we've had Columbia Wellness or the police do that at certain levels, but we have our own crisis team. We don't have a contract, but we got an obligation by the state to be there for our clients. Arn, you did mention that the ASO, which is Great Rivers, has a youth mobile crisis team. I went ahead and applied for that. And so we're waiting to hear back on that. That ends up being about 11 people FTE that we feel like that's going to have to be part of the motor to operate that. But we'll see what happens there. But it fits in, if you think about it, we have access to 30 different schools and we see the kids that are coming in and out of juvie, those that are truant. And so it seems like it might be a pretty good fit that will run into the same kids. And so relationships will be established and built and will be trusted. So there's a 24-hour period in youth legal status. 24 hours to figure out, okay, where's your parents? Are they willing to sign off, et cetera, et cetera? By 72 hours, if we haven't come up with much, CPS. We work with CPS, we work with the courts, and we figured that out with the courts, with CPS. And we work with them quite a bit. You can see that the HOPE Act was established in 1999 off to the bottom there. You can see the HOPE Act. We will model our program after the HOPE Center through our partnership and Core Health. Each youth admitted to our facility. Can people go somewhere else? Yes. Tracking to make sure they follow through. We ask for compliance at any one of those outfits. Physical examination, mental health evaluation, substance use evaluation, educational evaluation. That educational evaluation, we talked to PACS. PAX is a nonprofit out of Vancouver that helps kids get GEDs. We've talked about having them share a space up in Cowlitz County because they're pretty successful down in Lewis County or Clark County. So we've been talking with them about coming up and helping us with that. But we have tutors that volunteer that have been teachers in the past and they want to tutor. Daily care. So medical, psychological, physical, developmental. And you know, the behavioral management, there's going to be kids that are going to resist certain things. We just met with the state yesterday and we listened in on this DS law, this lawsuit. I think what they were doing is CPS has been hosting kids at hotels. And the question is it one-on-one in that hotel room with that one kid and that one adult? How safe is that? How does the adult protect themselves? How does the kid protect themselves? Do we have cameras in there or do we not? So that's what that lawsuit was. Well, we come up to this application, and that was a 2016 adaptation of the WAC. Well, bring it to current. We're in the midst of a NRM, the negotiated rulemaking that's going to take place from here until June. So from now till June, we get to all the interested parties that are involved in whatever application of youth there is that this WAC falls under, this WAC 110, 16, 45, whatever, that all those parties get to sit down and say, hey, this is what we need for safety and security. We need common areas to have video cameras and audio. We need hallways and entrances because there are so many things that go on with people that are normal, but with people that have trauma-informed situations. And when I say normal, we all have trauma stuff that we went through. But I'm talking kids that lose their housing, you know, and parents and stuff like that, or at least temporarily. And they might be trauma in their mind. So with that, there's going to be certain aspects of their care that are going to require oversight that we can't possibly one-on-one. Do you know what Quest School does? They have 5 kids in elementary, 5 junior high, 5 high school, 5 in each room, and they got to have 2 staff per kid because these are challenging kids. Well, this is not the same necessary population that we'll have, but I'm just saying ratio is required 1 per 8. So I told the guy from the state that's handling this, I said, hey, what if, you know, we have 12 guys, 12 girls, and one's down in the lounge, one's up by their room, one's over doing homework in the training center. That's 3 people. Well, get more staff. Well, that sounds nice. It sounds real nice. But we'll obviously have kitchen staff. We'll have someone monitoring the lounges, but the omnipresence, we just aren't. We never will be as people. So I'm going to lobby that we do cameras with video in common areas, in entrances, because you'll find that they'll let people in. There'll be all kinds of sneaky stuff that goes on. Another subject they brought up is social media. How do you handle the most complex, confusing situation nowadays in a child's life? I hate to say this, but there's 9-year-old girls hooked on porn. Okay. This phone freedom is consuming a lot of people in our society and confusing them, confusing their identities. And so in order to deal with that, we got to teach them to self-medicate or self-medicate, self-monitor, and to come up with other soothing skills other than looking at this next text or this next Facebook or TikTok or whatever. So there's a thing called Yonder. Fortunately, it was one of our young Brady brought it up that there's a lock box or lock bag, and it's called Yonder, YONDR. And it's, I don't know if it's a Kevlar pack, but it's a Kevlar where you lock magnetically the phone in that bag and the kid can hold on to it. That way you reduce the risk of, as an agency, you lost my phone, someone stole my phone, blah, 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 blah. So they've got possession of their own phone, and there's going to be certain times where we'll allow them to use it. Obviously, they need to sleep at night. So, and we had this conversation yesterday amongst other entities like us out in the state. A lot of them on the inpatients, they take a box and they say, throw your phones in here. We're going to keep them while you're staying here. We don't want to, if you need your phone back, you're going to have to either exit or whatever. It's like cut and dry. We know that the kids are going to have to learn to manage and self-control. So we're going to have to put some of that into practice. But that yonder seems like a good possibility for us to manage. So behavioral management, because we know social media will be a big deal. Safety plan. We have, we sat through a presentation, what was it, 2 or 3 hours or an hour the other day? It's right response. A majority of the people in the state that are running this, and you probably won't see right response written into this, but that's the company that we're selecting to go with. We got to have people trained. It's like $1,900 per person, train the trainer. But I would like to have people trained so that we can have them ripple effect and make sure, because I tell you what, lawsuits, it's a lawsuit happy world after COVID. And so we are preparing up front to meet the battles that come our way. So right response teaches us how to restrain. If we have to restrain, what do we do? What's our policies say? Okay, the financial plan. Okay, so when you get to page 13, an accountant, this might confuse an accountant. I know Dave Spurgeon was saying, Frank, you need our expenditures and our revenue. And I said, well, here's what it is. On the top half of this, we see the $5.34650 million of what it takes to do whatever the state said they'd give us, which is 1.9 million for the purchase of the building. And then you can see 3.3 left over for construction. You can see 30,000 for permits, fees, and hookups. And then there's some soft costs. And in all of this, there's about 250,000 of estimated state and local taxes swallowed up in this as well. So you know how this gets eaten up. So we originally stated 8.1 million. This is at 7.8 million. We're asking the county for 2.5 million to finish the balance of this facility. Now, this is a 40-year project. This is a 40-year shelter. It's an obligation by the state. And so that it has to be low income housing of some sort, and youth. And some have changed.
Can I ask real quick, Frank,
Yeah.
just so I'm clear on that? The state says when they granted this money, you have to have this facility for 40 years. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right. Otherwise you pay back. So no one wants to pay back. No one. So all that to say is, when the governor was down here and when we spoke to his advisor the other day, he said, we were marveling at what you have in Cowlitz County. We couldn't believe that you had a youth center for activities. You're going to have a youth shelter. You've got adults and families, and then you've got all these other things in that area that could be supported. And I said, because Gus, what was Gus's last name? Nolte. Yeah, he said it's not selection of which company they go with, it's convenience. They're going to look to convenience. It's got to be convenient. And so that means relationship, natural trust. We're helping watch your kids during the day. We're helping feed you breakfast and dinner, and the community is involved in this. So the trust is kind of an affiliation of a location, and we've got it on site. So you can see the 2.51 million would do it all. We shaved it off from 8.1 down to 7.8. And we're in the process. We got the rooms framed out. And, the MEP is going to be quite a bit. the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. We've already had the asbestos removed, and we're moving along on this project. Now, keeping in mind, Core Health, instead of a bank loaning money at 6%, Core Health is loaning money at 6% and at $1 million at a time. And so we do $1 million, we gotta pay the LP&H Mechanical, who processes all their stuff through the state, has for years. And we submit an A-19 after we get the canceled check back to us. Then they'll pay us. So in other words, you pay up front and it's a reimbursement on the back half. I know you said the county's the same way. So we expect that. We've done that before. The financial plan, page 14, you can see we have the annual budget and you can see the operational funding. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I've swallowed up a ton of your time, but look at the milestone and future plans. So you can see that in October of 2024, we're ready to occupy, and it's housing people. It's housing the kids. So we're in the process here. In 2023, October 2023, construction on the youth shelter is started, and it begins at the end of October, and it's continuing on. And you can see a list of our board members. They hold me accountable. It's good to have some people rein you in, and it's good to have some people prompt you on. And it's good to have, you know, you guys have been really good. Could I have the board stand here real quick? Could I introduce them real quick as I stand up real quick? Okay, Bruce Rosenbrock, he's been there since 1990 something. Hal Mankey's he's the original 1988 board member. Jordana, she has been on the board for about 6 months. Yep. And then Michelle, she works at NORPAC and she does the purchasing manager there. Alan Brassfield, he does construction and renovation. He's actually the vice president of the board. And then Eric McCrandle in the back, and he actually oversees all the facilities for Family Health Center. So I got a good combination of board members. That's fine. Thanks, guys. And we also have, we have Brian Luce, who's actually the board president, wasn't able to be here, but he was the, the risk manager for the city of Longview. So, and then Dave Spurgeon, who's a treasurer and a business owner. So we built Core Health from the ground up to 200 employees today. We saw 2,100 clients last month. We're required by the state to do certain things, and we do them. And it started from scratch. And I do accredit the good board team, the good community, and it's such a good mission. And I think we really need to focus on the youth. Sorry.
Frank, I had a quick,
Are you done?
Well,
Kelly and I have a bet how long we're gonna go today. So
It's a fire hose version.
I had a quick clarifying
Yes,
question.
yes.
In the 2.5 of the county requested funds, if I understand right from kind of our previous conversation, that portion of the request or that funding is specific to rehabbing the restaurant, the dining room area and the workforce training area of
Yep,
the
the training
building.
area and as well as the lounge area. So
Okay.
about 12,000 square feet is what that's for.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just want to
12,000
make sure I
square feet.
understood. Okay.
Yep.
I know you sent us a sheet today and I didn't get a chance. Had other things going. What do we have in that fund?
Yes. So, and I can hand it out now if you'd like.
Yeah, if you don't
Um,
mind.
I'll leave, there's extra copies up here. So I had added in, we've seen this spreadsheet a lot, so hopefully it looks sort of familiar. What I added in was a couple of recent allocations that I've talked to the board about for the Catlin and Maine project and for Family Promise. So I added those in the 23 column, even though we don't have contracts finalized for that yet, but I just wanted to make sure the numbers were sort of included in our math.
Okay,
So if you go to the 2023 column, you can see all of our expenditures listed there, what we anticipate, and what we have allocated. So we go down to the bottom, and we estimate an ending fund balance at the end of 2023 at about 2.3 million. So it's again, it's a rough estimate because we know we don't have the contracts finalized, but I wanted to make sure we had numbers calculated in here. The revenue we know for this year, the revenue is decreasing in document recording fees, and the city of Longview is taking their portion out. And so it's a little bit lower than we've seen historically. And so we want to just be thinking about that as we move forward too with what plans we may have in the future for document recording fees and what we want to make sure to keep sort of in our reserves, if you will. So happy to answer any questions
Yeah.
about that.
oh, this is helpful, but revenue substantially, those fees substantially reduced over the next couple of years, just based on what the volumes we're seeing. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a combination, like I said, combination of the doc fees just going lower this year and the city of Longview taking,
Direct allocation,
Right.
sure.
Chairman, I have just a few questions.
Sure.
Again, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah,
It was a tour de force. I mean, we've heard from you quite often, and
Sorry.
no, that's not a criticism at all. I am not very smart when it comes to acronyms that are used, and I always have to ask what they mean.
Sure.
And throughout your booklet, there's something called DCYF, and I don't have a clue what that
Okay.
means.
So in 2015, I believe it was 2015, DSHS split up and they put Department of Children, Youth and Family.
Okay.
And so that's their focus.
And is that the location for CPS, or is that still another agency?
CPS is overseen by DCYF. Am I
Okay.
correct?
So,
Yes.
so that's the reorganization.
Yeah, that's a state level.
does make
organization.
sense.
Yeah.
I am assuming that if you have youngsters who have addiction
Mhm.
Disorders,
Mhm.
they're going to be classified as special ed students. They're going to have access to that. I mean,
Sure.
because
Not
they've got
necessarily,
some
but, you know.
disabilities. So my question is age limits for your program.
Oh,
You're
thank you.
talking about ages.
Yeah.
And I know from my experience in the classrooms, there are some who have special needs
Mhm.
who are entitled to free public education until they turn 21.
Mhm.
Is that going to be a pretty good standard to go on for
I,
your program?
for the unaccompanied youth, I would think that there would be some that are in addiction. I wouldn't say that they're special ed because some are really intelligent and, they spin in their head more and they think on a high level. It's from 13 to 17 is the ages we're looking at. And we're looking at unaccompanied youth. And I asked Nancy Baldwin from the Kelso School District, who's kind of the head over McKinney-Vento and the Family Resource. And I said, give me the demographics of your 26 kids, you say. How are they doing in school? Are they in addiction? Are they blah, 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 blah? And she said 80% of the kids that she has are on their way to graduation. 80% are en route to graduate. And she said she doesn't know how many are in addiction, but I do know that's an underreported thing. I don't know if you guys know this, but we do vape education in the schools. Medicaid actually allows that now. And we find out that a lot of these kids vaping are using marijuana in there or other things. So all that to say is, I know that we have the ability to select, and that's where our battle could be lost or won. And we're going to try to select the kids that we feel like would be a good fit into the program. Because we want the atmosphere to be set. And so as far as special ed up to 21, those in the STEPS program are very complex, as you know. And anyone over 18 would have to be at community house. We tread lightly on some of that population just for the fact of risk factor. We talk to CPS and we get our ROIs, release of information, and we learn as much as we can. So I think, Dennis, we're going to have a good selection on the knowledge that we have and the relationships we have, so where we'll be successful and we won't be running into as much violence as you might have thought or could be.
The reason I asked about the extended
Yeah,
age
I hear
time
you.
is because one of the hallmarks you have is that as long as they're working towards their goals,
Yeah,
they can stay.
right. Well, and it's
There's
got
not
to
there's not a
too.
time, there's
Yeah.
not an automatic time limit.
Right.
So one of the other areas I know we have a real challenge with are those who age out of the foster care
Mhm.
system. They probably would
Yeah.
fit your program really well, except they're aging out.
Yeah,
So you wouldn't even consider those.
that would be
who
the
are-
young adults.
Yeah.
They'd be young
And
adults.
they wouldn't be.
They wouldn't be, the 18 and over to 21 wouldn't fit in this category. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but those who are working in the program and turn 18 and
Yeah,
19.
and keeping in mind compliant with what their recovery is in, some it could be laziness. Some it could be their mental health, some it could be addiction, some it could be just a variety of things. And it could be that stupid gaming thing, on internet stuff. So it's working on those things to become self-sufficient. I was just at Rotary and it was interesting. There was a guy his name's Tommy Jones, and he heads up a CNA training school. And I said, what's the youngest age you go down to on CNAs, certified nurses assistants? And he said, down to 16, if a guardian signs off on them. And, we select based upon, they got to be trustworthy. And so I thought, in looking at how people become nurses, even like my son-in-law, he became a CNA first, then a nurse. And next thing you know, he's going to try to become like Brianna Hall is, a psychiatric nurse practitioner. So that's a good stair-step occupation. So some of these kids, we're going to get them trained in the training center for all kinds of variety of skills. But I've got not just us, but I got like owners of businesses calling me and saying, we want to mentor the youth, like Jordan Burns and some of the others. They call me and ask me, when's that going to happen? We want to be a part of this. And it's on a pretty good scale. So as far as kids, it's going to be a team approach. It's going to be multicultural and all that stuff, but we are going to pick those that are going to be a good fit.
You're estimating how.
Oh, yes, the stay. Is it every 15 days? Guys, does anyone know the whack? I think we have to get it extended every 15 days with CPS, with the kids to stay there.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
yeah.
So.
But we got to be working.
Constant evaluation.
And here's the
Yeah.
other thing too, is we've got to be working towards getting them a guardian. It's not just, live here till you're 18. It's not going to be that. They need a family of some sort of support structure outside of us.
You've supplied a lot of information for us. Your annual operating budget is going to be around about what?
It looked like we had it at 1.3. Is that what we were at? Yeah, I think it was 1.3. Huh?
1366.
Well, yeah, it's, okay, the operating budget, 1.366 million. Yep, 1.3, and then you can see down below how the revenue comes to fulfill that. And it's pretty shocking, Dennis. We did the renovation of the first floor of Community House last year, and that was a $1.7 million project. And we came out ahead, which is shocking, but that's what our community does. That's what God does. And that's what we just got a good community. And yeah, you can't say enough about that.
So one of the questions that I always try to look at is
Sure.
Your cost per client
Mhm.
ratio.
Yeah.
To see how that compares with other programs that we come up with.
Right.
And of course, a residential program is going to be much more expensive than outpatient.
Inpatient's much more expensive. Yeah, inpatient.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like a community house, it's $26.50 per night per person because we do about 600 people. This year, like Arn, we were trying to figure out what's the numbers of the first year. Well, we were thinking maybe 100 to 200, and then you divide that out. But then again, it's an algebraic combination because you've got the cost of, juvie, all the other costs. Okay. So we're heading off millions for the future. We're heading off millions for the future. And we could come up with some kind of combination, but you're not even going to be able to multiply that out until 10 years. You look back, holy cow, what a change. Because that's how change is. It's pretty slow and it's hard freaking work. That's why a lot of people don't do what we do.
The last little question, then
Sure.
I'll be quiet for a while, I suppose. And I do want to thank you for your quick response. I think I'd sent an email about
Yeah.
the whole issue of
Yeah.
safety.
Yep.
We have history in this community of
Yep.
a residential facility that ended up being closed by the
Right.
state, the Two Rivers Boys Ranch,
Yep.
tremendously supported by the public,
Mm-hmm.
but something went wrong.
Yeah.
And you provided the background, and
Good.
it might just be helpful for those who may be listening in about the safety protocols, because that is a pretty important
Yeah.
feature that you pointed out to me, and
Yeah.
that is written in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And you said the key things.
Mm-hmm.
How do the clients stay safe, and how does staff stay safe? Because staff is really vulnerable
Yeah,
in these kind of
absolutely.
situations.
And
Can you just kind of share what kind of protocols,
Yeah.
what you're going to be doing
right.
to
There's
ensure
like a
that?
mutual accountability occurs there. It's not just the kids, it's the adults as well, because one of the biggest contentions we have or situations we have is people coming out of a situation where they've had to manipulate, triangulate, and do whatever kind of tool they use to survive. We have to undo some of those things. And so it's important to be ahead of it a little bit. When you've got counselors and doctors and peer counselors and mental health staff that can intercommunicate, because that's one of the big things is when someone signs in to stay into our program, they sign to share the information from this organization to this organization and vice versa. And I think drug court, you guys do the same with all partners. If a UA comes dirty, all the entities involved share the information. That way there's no triangulation, coalition building, et cetera. So that's a key point. Another key point is this right response. It's going to be a training. I forgot how long the training was. 4 days. Yes. And was it up in Gig Harbor, Oak Harbor, or somewhere thereabouts? Say that? Oh, they'll come to us. Yeah, that's right. If we at least have 4 people, I said we'll probably have 10 people, which is 20 grand. So cameras is going to be a big deal. Cameras and audio. We solve a lot of mysteries by, hey, this happened. No, this happened. Okay, let's see what this says. So we've got about a year of that. And honestly, that's that might hem us in. I know in our program here, our initial, the initial one, we said, hey, the first year we're going to do 24 kids. And that kind of hems me in from not thinking, don't go to 48, Frank, stay at 24 or less to make sure you're safe, because those laws take into effect 2025. I think it was like October 2025 or September 2025, the new WACs that we're creating for this. So a lot of it's knowing the laws, getting the right training, having the right arrangement of information being shared about the clients, and selection of the clients coming in, and selection of the staff. And a lot of times we'll do staffing, they have to grow into a spot. We have a 2.7% turnover rate at Core Health. And that's a pretty darn good rate of turnover when you're talking 200 staff. In other words, there's very few people that leave. And a lot of it has to do with, if we find good people and we're training these people from the ground up, I'm going to keep my eyes on things and my staff and my leaders, and we're going to make sure and hold on to them if we can. It's been a hard year to hold on to people when the prices have gone up so much. So staffing, you got to pay them right too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go in a slightly different vein, but before I do that, I want to say that's quite an excellent presentation.
Thanks, Ern.
I have appreciation basically for all you do. And whatever battle we have, it's a battle of the methods. It's not a battle of the goals. It's not a battle of personality or disrespect or anything like that. Up here, I don't have any friends and I don't have any enemies. All I've got is what I would call a normal engineering problem. Scarcity of resources have to be dealt with. And I approach everything with that particular view. And so let me ask the clerk to start that PowerPoint and share her screen. And there were a lot of thoughts going through my mind and in your presentation, which was actually quite well done. So I tend to have a holistic approach to any problem. I found out through my 75 years that good ideas are relatively easy to find. But executing them much harder. And in my opinion, if we in Cowlitz County are going to solve, and I put solve in quotations, this issue, it's probably going to be at Frank's hands as a champion for the kids. You and I have met last time off premises, and in some sense, I challenge you to solve the problem that I've discussed over the years with a detention center that costs us a fortune. And I think of the people that go into detention, if that's the full universe of those going into detention, these are people that probably belong in there. The rest of it are just like we were as youngsters, sort of lost, but we maybe had the opportunities of a family structure that kind of helped us through those complexities. And the challenge we have is to give young people a reason to live. When we do everything for them, they have no reason to live, and they're willing to try anything because they're indestructible at that age. And once the damage is done, trying to recover from that is very difficult. And that's kind of what you're trying to address here. So I'm going to view this as a discussion. People may have noticed that the tenor of the Board of County Commissioner meetings has changed. Before, it used to be almost a barrier between the dais and the public. And I like to view us as being members of a team to solve the problem, not as ones that dictate. And that sort of attitude has, I think, begun to show payoffs in the county administration. Just my opinion, and it's not sure I can substantiate it. So we all speak English, but our vocabulary may not be a common vocabulary. That is to say, if you table something in the United States is different than if you table it in England, just the understanding of the word. So I'm going to try and go through a little more building of perspective. And so let me go to, that's the first slide. And one of the difficulties any government official has is trying to figure out, could you go back to that slide? I'm sorry. Just had a okay. We need to know when it's emotionally driven and when it's logically driven. That doesn't mean that you can't make emotional decisions. What it means is that you're going to make bad decisions if you don't lay it all out. Tangible costs, intangible costs. In the private world, a thing that happens is your tangible costs may eat your lunch and you're out of business. In the government world, if your tangible costs are not handled well, you just raise your taxes. And unfortunately, that's kind of what we have seen. And in terms of emotional, I truly appreciate that we didn't go through anecdotes, because I can prove anything with anecdotes. And so there was one other point that is lost in a page of confused notes. So let me go to the next slide then, please. So very often we're faced with people demanding things, and they say, I pay my taxes. And the inference we're supposed to draw from that is that we should immediately respond to what they do. But we have, roughly speaking, 28,500 families in Cowlitz County. When we represent them, and we're supposed to, we represent them subject to Constitution, laws, and what I would call an assessment on our part of what the will of the people is. That is greatly misused. So I'm going to go through a sort of a little exercise to show that. I'd like on this particular slide to bring your attention to the penultimate and the ultimate words on the slide: individual rights. And whenever we do things that are in conflict with that, it always makes me feel uncomfortable. You sometimes have to do that. I understand that. Just saying you don't want to make that a habit. Okay, the next slide, please. So I just alluded to that. Next slide. Okay, so how do you figure out what the people want they want? Everybody wants something as long as the price is zero. And we all know that. And the thing we don't seem to know very well is that there really is no such thing as government money. And some people don't know that my right to something, if I have one, cannot put an obligation on another individual or another entity. So let's go on to the next slide. So I'm going to be a little bit didactic here and talk about what I would call the hot dog stand parable. If I open up a hot dog stand at the Monticello Quad, and I'm offering free hot dogs, in the beginning, no one's really going to know about it. Some passerby comes by and might start a conversation, and I might say, "You want a free hot dog?" "Oh yeah, sure, okay." Well, you parlay that through many days, and the line gets too big, and eventually you explode the system. That's just the whole idea. If it's free, the demand is infinite. And eventually what happens is you destroy the system. And that is kind of what we face as an engineering problem. Where does the money come from? Is it inexhaustible? Are we doing the best with that money? The next slide. So out of that hot dog example, what did I really learn was the will of the people. If they weren't willing to pay for the hot dogs afterwards, that tells me a lot. So what happens is, if you look at a lot of programs, everybody is for it, and everybody that has benefited from the program is wildly happy over the program. It is great to have Dennis Weber and Rick Dahl pay for my lunch, but it's really not sustainable. So let's go on to the next slide. So I looked at the numbers from your plan, and I did just a quick arithmetic there, and the capital costs as presented lead for $328,000, $328,000, and so forth. I'll go down to the bottom line is, if I had to pay today for the service for this today, I would have to go to every one of the 28,500 families in Cowlitz County and ask them for $276 to pay for the capital cost. And on top of that, $48 this year and $48 every year thereafter. I'm cheating a little bit here because I'm not including all the other costs that you're going to incur along the way. So what would happen if I actually could and did go to the 28,500 families, knocked on the door and said, I need a check for, I'm not going to add it up in my head, I'll make a dastardly mistake, $324 or some such thing. They slammed the door on my face. They wouldn't care. Why I'm bringing this up is because we are probably going to have to assess, is this the best use of the money? The next slide. Because there are things, and you sort of alluded to them a little bit, the opportunity costs. You spend money on one project, you can't do it on another. And so this is the quandary I have. Is this a bad idea? No, it's not. Is it a cost-effective idea? Well, that's what's being discussed on the table. Is there no other option? We've talked a little bit about, I'd be standing on my head with the colleagues to go and recoup Nacelle Youth Center and turn that into a place that's already built and make that something to address the issues that you are trying to address. Then I have the bureaucratic issue, and I'm, as you all know, I'm a little negotiable on bureaucratic issue, because bureaucracy is okay if it works for you, but most of us work for bureaucracy, and that's not a good thing. You want to work for reasonable things. So these document recording fees are, at least initially, and Jana can straighten me out on that, to help with affordable housing. And I don't think this does that. Let me set all of that aside. I think don't do the next slide is another quotation. Yeah, okay, so let's stop there. Let me stop here for a moment and let you ask me back questions. Tell me where I should rethink how I'm thinking.
Gina, isn't a youth shelter or a youth homelessness addressed in the 5-year plan?
And I'll just go back for a second to the document recording fees. They're designated for housing and homeless services that are identified in our local 5-year plan. The plan right now is prioritized affordable housing as the priority focus area, but it does include, it also includes the ability to fund some different interventions like emergency shelter.
Yeah, let me add to that. That isn't going to stop us. If we determined here that that is the right way to put the money, we'll just change the plan. Agreed, right? We've done that before.
The board can make changes to the
Yeah.
plan as they see fit.
So, okay, so you asked me, and that's just one thing I wanted to go back to, because that's why the RFP was put out and it said youth and others when you guys originally put out the RFP. So, we responded. And then when you said go to the 28,500 houses and ask for a check for $274 or whatever it was, that's a political mindset. That's a politic way of looking at it. That's like, we're going to tax you $274 each. Where is it? I think it's more about if you see youth that need the help, it's better to help them, to let them, than to not help them, because you might as well tie your millstone around your neck and drown yourself. It's in the Bible. If you don't help the youth and you allow them to struggle or to drown and not do nothing, it's gonna create problems for our society. And that's just a fact.
The purpose of that 28,500 families is that, and I'm not sure I can paint the picture completely, but when you've lived in other parts of the world like I have, and you see that the United States is going down and the debt burden is at over 34 trillion now, this is going to end, and it's going to end ugly.
But we're starting, this is Cowlitz County, and this is the field we plow, not the world.
Please, I'm not done on that.
Yeah.
Even though this applies in general, right now with Cowlitz County, we've got the amount of money that Gina showed us in the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something over which we do not have choice. So we can spend it, and that isn't necessarily an argument, but I want people to understand that it is not free money. And I'm trying to assess the will of the people. And assessing the will of the people can only be done if people know that there is not a free lunch.
Now, when I had people, okay, so first of all, we already talked about operational costs. I don't know if you've looked at the operational cost of the financial plan, but I look at it on page 14, and there's no government money asked for in that area. I don't see any county or city.
Again,
It's not county or city.
right. I'm not trying to fight you, and I'm not
Well,
trying
I'm
to.
just saying a lot of people support what we do, like 1,000+ people.
Exactly. I'm not trying to make a sale here. I'm trying to point out that regardless where the money comes from, it's an expensive operation. And people just need to understand the holistic picture of the process. Otherwise, we're going to make mistakes. Now, you mentioned earlier, you said, holy cow, looking back. And that's exactly it. But do you realize how many times in my 75 years I've heard looking back, and how many times that has materialized?
We keep track of our statistics. So I can give you our statistics for the last, I trust from 2007, 15 on, 17 on for sure. So I've got those statistics if you'd like them.
You're sort of missing the point that in the aggregate, we can discuss all kinds of stuff. We discussed a lot of detail, which to me was sort of interesting modestly, but it was really your purview to decide how to run the shop and operate it. What I'm really interested in is, can an outside observer from the planet Mars look there and say, I knew when the drug court was started. I knew when chess was started. I knew when this youth center was built by the observables outside, not on a single individual, because with single individuals, you can prove almost anything. And I don't think that's how you can do public policy decisions. You have to look, are you making progress?
Yeah,
And if
because
you're
you
not,
can't prove anything. That's pretty exaggerative. So, you know, I don't think every individual you can take and prove anything, you know.
yeah,
Okay. So kids are needing help. It's pretty simple.
but let me add on then. What if there was another solution? So you see, fundamentally, I'm trying to explain that I don't think this will actually be cost effective. I also don't think it will be cost effective because we don't realize we can't tackle this problem one by one, because there are just too many things like that. And
One
so,
person becomes a family if they,
but there are 28,500 families here. And by the way, people tend to look at things in sort of a provincial way, that is to say, political boundaries. I see that there are a lot of people in the world hurting, period. In Cowlitz County, wouldn't it be nice if we understood that some of the fundamental things we do are actually leading to the trouble we have? That's a longer discourse, and people have heard me say, we've lost the war on drugs and we're doing a lot of problems, and everything is either blamed on COVID or on drugs. And but that's not what we can tackle. Here, we just have to look at it in a narrow view and see, is this the best way? Could you come up and handle, instead of for this kind of dollars, handle twice as many kids? It's a valid question.
how many homes are there in CPS? How many foster homes are in our county?
And then,
No, I mean, this is the truth. How is CPS working? How is juvenile detention working? Those are one by ones. And we adopted practically a whole family. So how are they working?
I'm not sure what your question has to do with it.
Question has to do with the youth. How are they being taken care of? Because if they're keeping kids in hotels with no supervisor or no guardian, there's not enough foster homes out there. So that's taking care of the kids. We took in two on one time, 3 on another. Not many people do that. So it's one by one.
That's an argument apart.
Well, it's not working, is what we're saying.
We have, in the greater picture, we have government policies that are destructive of the family. So we've destroyed the family.
That's why we have our own policies. That's why we protect our kids that we watch over. That's how you overcome some of these things.
Listen to this for a moment. Back when we were working with Camp Alabama, you answered an RFQ, right? Or an RFP. And you were going to handle essentially 100 people for 1.5 million, or slightly less than that. You didn't get it. You know who got it? Nobody. But you know who went ahead and adopted a plan was 50 people at 2.5 million. It made no sense at all. That was a completely political decision.
And it's a totally opposite decision than what we're doing, because we are going to UA the kids. You guys didn't want us to UA the adults at the
Don't
Hope
include me
Village.
on that.
Well, I'm just saying that's how it got denied.
Well, it got denied on some specious arguments, yes, and that one. And so I just bring that up to say, what I'm trying to do here is make sure that we're not the ones saying we're going to throw away that 1.5 million bid because we know better. I'm saying, let's look at it. And part of what bothers me here is, I think my colleague mentioned, we don't see enough of you or something like that. And the answer is, yeah, we don't see enough of you. And
Enough of what?
we don't see enough of you. We don't get to talk to Frank Morrison enough.
Well,
It was something for me to finally get a meeting with you at the youth center.
yeah. Well, we're taking care of the 140, 150 people a day per
I
bird,
understand.
I mean,
Not a
that's what we
problem.
do, Arn. And I don't know if you really see, last time you stated, I just don't see it. I just don't see this many kids having this need. You kidding me?
Yeah, I heard you. I'm trying to digest it.
Teachers, you got to be with them in the classroom, or check to the principals, or talk to the counselors in the school. You don't talk to Frank. I brought superintendents here, and you were upset at me for bringing. You were upset at me for bringing a couple to our meeting some time ago.
The reason I brought this issue was for a different purpose. It's simply to say that at this stage, this conversation we're having today should have been had a year ago or something.
I started
2
in
years
November
ago.
of last year. I've got it documented when we started this whole conversation. I could show you the emails I've been starting. So the reality is the need is there. Whether you see it or not, it's there. We're dealing with it. My counselors, we've got 135 of them, and half of them are seeing the kids. It's a reality.
You know very well that I understand what you're saying, because we have talked about that anytime. When we have talked, I have an appreciation for the struggles that children have.
Well,
we're looking for
We got to
solutions.
do something, Martin. We got to do something. Nobody else is going to step up to do this. Nobody. They haven't up to this point. And I said, I'm going to do this. And I've got a structure built. It's worked successfully with Community House. It'll work successfully with this.
So again, my point was your ask is really ambitious. Had we discussed this earlier,
Give what you can.
maybe you wouldn't have been halfway across the stream.
Give what you can. Okay. We will accept what you offer, but just know that the community does support this. And I held back on having people come forward because you got upset.
Well,
when I had just a few tell a story.
But that's exactly why I went through the 28,500 families, because I really don't think if I'm going to go around and ask 28,500 families and they slam the door in my face, that is their will. Just you saying that they
are they the functional families in the west side, or are they dysfunctional in this side or that side? You have it simplistically delegated throughout, and it's not a simple process like that.
They are the taxpayers.
Doesn't matter. Everyone's different. Every family's different. A lot of families will take the help.
But one of the things, as I've been listening to the dialogue going back and forth, the state, of course, sets the rules in an awful lot of what we do.
Right.
Right. That's one of the ahas all elected officials learn. So we are controlled by what the laws require us to do. But we have an interesting situation here, and Frank alluded to the state's solution is unsupervised housing in hotels.
That's not our solution.
That's not our solution.
Yeah.
And that's the point that I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
The state has told us to spend this money on addressing homelessness and affordable housing. And we have this fund built up. And I do have some questions because I think we're missing some of the major expenditures that we've asked to spend. But if in 2025, we're going to have $2.5 million left over, we're not spending that money.
You haven't spent it.
And the
It's been
state,
sitting on
and,
it for a long time.
and we definitely know we don't like the state's solution.
No.
I would rather us to use local resources, help where we can. If we have the money available,
Right.
let the local public demonstrate their willingness. Yes, it is costly. We need to expect,
Initial
honestly.
cost and
But that money can always be taken away by the state. If we're not going to use it, they will use it. They'll find other ways to use it. I would rather it be the solution be locally generated. And that's kind of the approach that I'm looking at.
Exactly.
The question though I have for Gina is on this list of programs and services. I remember authorizing a grant to housing opportunities for this, what do they call it? Sunrise Village out near 38th. And I don't see where we've listed that $750,000.
So if you look at line 21, you see housing opportunities of Southwest Washington.
Right.
If you look over to the allocation, it says $292,200. The reason for that is that's what we are using from document recording fees. The remainder of that award came from the 1406 affordable housing
Oh,
dollars.
that's on the affordable housing line.
Correct. Sorry.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, so it's a different line. Okay.
Yeah. So that one was a partial allocation from document recording fees and partially from the 1406 funds.
Well, that clears that up because we're missing something. Okay, sorry.
Well, I'd like to, instead of just me bloviating my opinion here, I'd like to have the audience have an opportunity to speak a little bit if we could.
Can I just go sit down?
Yeah, we'll give you a break, Frank.
I'll leave the mic on.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm Bill Buchan with LPNH. And I want to correct the record here. If we're going to use the whole amount on Cowlitz County, this project is 2.5 on Cowlitz County and 5.3 on Washington State, you can't use just Cowlitz County population. You have to use Washington State of 7.7 million. So if you take that 7.7 million and you divide it out, this is a pretty good low cost program that we're putting together. Can't go both ways. You got to go, we're looking at 2.5 million. You divide that into your population, or you can go the 7 million and divide that into 7.7 million. So I think you're starting on your math a little bit wrong, Aaron. It's either one way or the other. You can't have it all together like that. If you're gonna put it all together, put it in the right population. That's it.
Anybody else? Tim, I thought I saw you. Okay.
Is this a one-time asking for money? Because it looks like it to me when they're asking for funds from the county for the building. Isn't that what they're asking for?
It's presented as a one-time, yes.
A one-time ask? And what I was here in April when you had meeting on the youth. And sorry. Are you not trying to break a cycle here of constant generational addiction, bad behavior to make productive members of society? I can see Frank's point very clearly sitting in the audience and being a parent myself. and Arn, you as well. Their kids can misbehave and then they end up in juvie. Mine haven't. They had mom to contend with. And it kept them on the straight and narrow. But these other students do not have a structure and they need a structure. Seems like he's gone through all of the hoops on fire. Every time he's been asked, Frank Morrison comes up with the documentation and proof as to what his goals are. And there is nobody in this county that is not more aware. I'm a tightwad and I want my money to count. I make Lincoln scream at pennies when it comes to budgets and whatnot. And I'm not free spending type of individual, and I'm known for that, and I have no apologies. But if for a one-time, for him to secure the building seems to be the most logical way to spend these allocated funds. Had I had my rathers, and the public needs to know this, these recording fees go to the state. And only 40% of them come back to the county from which they were originally supposed to stay and be used for our use. Now, people that are having a tizzy fit over the funding and where the money goes should probably start having that reversed to where our funds stay here and don't go up to the state and filter back at a less. 40%, that's ridiculous that to get back. We should have the whole 100% of the recording fees here, but that's not the commissioner's fault. That's our legislature. We need as people, as citizens, to deal with it and tell them, fix the mess that you created. Weber's right. The longer we sit on our hands and we don't spend the money, it is in a dwindling. That's not necessarily the recording fees that you're taking in, correct, Mr. Weber? So it's we went from close to 4 million, 3,976,849 in 2022 actual funds. Projected is 2,332,878 for 23. And the outlook doesn't look that much better. I'm sure that that's because economy stinks and we don't see it necessarily getting much better in the following years by maybe $100,000 per year. So we may end up with even less revenue to be able to use as an asset for our youth. I'm, as a citizen, as a mother, I'm going to just point blank tell you that this plan makes sense to me. You don't want to give them all the money. I can see that too, but you're going to end up having somebody like people from Hope Village or something similar coming and attacking you every freaking meeting that you had, because I've been here and listened to it. Let's not go down that road. Look out for our youth. And I can see this. I really can. The other option that you have to fund this would be to bring it up to the people to vote for 0.25% on their tax on sales tax, 0.25%, something on that lines. But why? You have the money sitting. You can at least dedicate part of it, all of it, make your decision, even 3/4 of it. Like Frank said, anything helps. So I'm pleading for the man because it makes sense.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of a rebuttal to that, the opportunity costs means that the ask that I'm expecting at some point to come, and I don't know anything about it, from House Law or Campus Towers is going to be denied if we spend all the money. It's a government thing that if you've got the money, you got to spend it. And I have never been an advocate of that outlook. And I'll remind people that there are best laid plans of mice and men. And there, in 1965, the initiation of the Great Society to the epoch, I think, ending in 2010, the federal government spent an average of $227,000 per year per fictitious family of 4 to end, poverty. And I don't think we're any better off today. In fact, I would claim we're worse off today than we were back then. So we spent $23 trillion, and what do we have to show for it? Then one last thing, the attitude of let's keep our money here, they should send more of it back to us. Where does somebody think all these grants we get from FEMA and a lot of other agencies come from? We're always cannibalizing our neighbor. The reason some representatives are successful in Washington, D.C. is because they bring home the bacon beyond what their people paid. Anyhow, next.
Yeah, thanks. Marty's made some good points there, and I understand the fiscal nightmare that we're in. I would not disagree with it. I just know that I've personally dedicated my life before retirement to children. I worked in a children's hospital for years. I also taught before that. And I just, his plan does sound like that's a plausible thing we could be doing to make a difference, because it's the cliche, but that is our future, the investment we make in kids. And the more kids we stabilize, and the more citizens we create that are not a burden later on, is a gift to the country. And I don't know any other way to do this that I have seen that works besides, and to have them in a structure where there's a lot of peer and professional support. And it's like, with all the stuff going on and all the things we're spending, like in Ukraine or whatever, I can't even begin to moralize about the money that's being wasted, because a lot of money is being wasted that isn't going to help people. So I would give this a shot, frankly. Thank you.
Make sure we're into the mic. Sorry,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry about that. I guess I'm Michelle. First off, I just want to make sure that if any of the information that was shared earlier is communicated outside of this group, and I think it'll be shared probably, I don't know, via the web, we do need to change what you wrote, Arn, about going to the county people with the $5 million that we already got from the state. Because that's already done. So then you'd have to reduce your numbers, and we didn't ask for operational costs. We're self-sufficient in that manner. So I would hope that that gets changed to be more accurate. Additionally, because the state has already given us $5 million, they're already in support of what Frank and CHOB and CORE is providing. The track record for these groups is impeccable. And the books are open. You can see it. You can look in the community and see the impacts they've had. Me personally, I've been in foster care. I know how it works. If I'd have had something like this, it'd been great. My group at work, we are personally providing Christmas presents for 150 homeless children through Janus House. They have nowhere to stay. They hitchhike, they walk, they live in the woods. They commit suicide. There's no one to help them. And I don't think you can even remotely quantify even helping 5 kids, helping 20 kids, what that means in the future. I think, it was already alluded to. You keep them out of juvie, you keep them out of prison, you keep them out of drug court, it goes on and on and on. So I don't know. I just hope that you find the grace to at least provide something to this organization. That's all I have to say.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I guess I want to address a few things. One is the number of people, it's not referencing a number, but on chart 14, operational funding sources, one that has been referenced is the community supports this repeatedly. Community supports this. Well, community supports and grants the amount of money there, the $439,000. I guess my question is that 1,000 people that are donating money out of 28,500 families in the county? I don't know what that number is, but so some definite portion of community and grant and probably businesses support this. I'm good for them. I'm absolutely behind them. If that support fails, I'm wondering, is the county where if we don't have enough funds, are we coming back to the county on a yearly basis, starting to tap, I need more funds? I don't know how that's going to work. I see that there are no state funding or county funding referenced in that operational funding sources. So I'm wondering if Medicaid or mental health is going to be something that is going to fall into that as necessary. One of the other things is said was change is slow. And yes, I agree that change is slow. However, apparently the need for expenses is not, because that's a pretty big chunk of money to happen overnight. It's not a slow thing. But this is addressing a problem that technically shouldn't exist. The problem starts at the family level. And if the family wasn't being destroyed by the state and federal government and their systems, if the family values were still there, our youth problem, by and large, wouldn't exist the way it does today. It's really a struggle for me that we're addressing a problem that is obviously down the road a considerable distance when we're trying to pick up the pieces of broken families after the fact. And we're trying to help the kids. And I'm not arguing that the kids need help. I'm not saying they don't need help. That's not my case at all. The problem is we're trying to address a problem that exists because the upstream problem that has created it makes it so we're just treating a symptom. We're not curing the problem. Hopefully we can help some percentage of the kids. That'd be great. But I don't know. I don't feel good about shooting that chunk of money out there, even though it looks like at this point, it looks like it's a one-time thing, but I don't know. What's the outcome? You can always paint a pretty picture on intents. I intended to do this. I intended to do that. We got a great program. But what are results? Measurable results. And I know that Frank runs a pretty good program. I know that it's successful in many ways. So I don't know. I'm struggling with the ins and the outs of this. Personally, I think the problem is at the family level that needs to be solved. This does nothing for that I can see. Thank you.
Why don't you let me offer a few comments, then we'll see what the board wants to do. First thing I can say is I pretty much agree with everything that's been said here. Commissioner Mortensen points out some things that at a national level we're in terrible shape at, but I don't have the genie bottle or the gavel to fix the national level things. All I can do is look at what we have around here. And if and you've heard me before, and people that know me know that if I'm taking money out of somebody's wallet, it has to be something that I can point at. They can see that something's being done. And these funds, as Commissioner Weber points out, have already been taken out of your wallet. And I don't have a whole lot of choices what to do with them. If I could write you checks and send it back, I'd probably do that, but we don't have that ability. So we have to, as has been pointed out, do what we think is best for these. I think, and I totally agree, the problem is the family unit. It's eroded and it causes these problems. But we have this big block, the way I look at it, we have this big block of dysfunctional adults, and we somehow got to start choking off that supply line. And we have to help in some way. So I'm going to support doing something for Frank here. Jesus.
Mr.
We're called to help, but the people it's not a one-sided thing. And I think Frank has a history of making sure it's not one-sided thing. These kids are going to have responsibilities. They're going to have expectations. And I think it's I've had so many other things come and want to use this money. Is this the pinnacle, the top thing? Maybe not. I've talked about Habitat. I like some of the things they do, and I'd like to see some of that. But I think it's a road that I'm willing to travel.
The beginning of this, Rick, one of the goals that Frank had and his group and the principals had come to the meeting, the workshop that I was at. The goal was to have these kids go through the program and become mentors for others, mentors, examples, success, so that they can see a goal other than just the same old crap every day. Becoming active participants in society. The more success that there is, I believe that it will snowball into others following.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal and that's the hope. It's a long-term process. What I know is I have more sympathy to help.
Somebody who can help themselves.
Somebody that helps themselves and the younger, because it's hard we've seen and
They need a
people have
chance.
different definitions of success when you talk about Hope Village with me. What I see is you had people dispersed, they're living other places, and nobody's fixed anything there except for this select group, cherry pick group that is able to do things. The kids is where you have an ability and hopefully you can change it.
And they can help others. Yes.
Well, you hope you can start choking that supply line.
Break the cycle. Sometimes this stuff's generational. It needs to end, like you said. You're doing good.
Yeah. So with that, I'll just leave it up to the direction of the board what they want to do with this.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we go ahead and award $2 million for the program.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor to award $2 million to the program. Any comments?
And the reason it's a little bit less than what they asked was we do need some kind of a reserve for that program. We do have ongoing programs. So I'm a little reluctant to go down to zero, but I think $2 million is a good demonstration that we're very supportive of a community-based program rather than having the state come in and just lock them or put them away in hotels with no structure. That's no solution at all.
I'm not going to speak for or against the motion, but I do have a question based on Commissioner Weber's earlier comments about with state requirements for I understood from your comments, I thought that because of the way that Frank's program is set up, that you could not do what you're proposing to do. I thought that there was restrictions on what you could do with that. I'm not against doing it, and I'm not for doing it. I'm just saying I want to understand what your previous comments were in relationship to the motion to do this.
Well, I said a lot, but one of the points I wanted to make was what we're doing differently from the Two Rivers Boys Ranch that ended up having a lot of the same kind of hopes and dreams and a lot of money and effort put into that.
Right.
And it got shut down. And I think, and I'm pretty convinced that not only has the state changed its rules on overall supervision, but Frank's organization has also learned from that, and they're setting it up with the kinds of supports that are necessary. So my questions were answered.
Okay. Well, the Bible quote for helping the youth, I think that references the responsibility back to the family, not whose responsibility is it. Let's make it the government's. I hate to see the government have to take over or getting even involved in family values, but here we are.
Any other comments? I don't see any hands. We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passes 2-1. And I know you guys have been very patient, but if we can recess for 5 minutes and we'll be back in. If I can start getting people back in their places, please. Thank you. Kelly, do we have the district map on web that he'd get it, that show you where the districts are drawn?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
All in your click it, put it in transfer, they did really good.
Okay. You got a four o'clock timeline?
I
Is that what
do.
I'm hearing?
Just me, not every, I don't know about
Okay.
everybody else, but.
So oh. Here comes Commissioner Mortensen. He's going, I lost him again. So we had some budget discussions we wanted to do. I'll try and, I think we made a decision not to do the levy, so there were some ideas that we were asking, where's that 400,000 to come from? I think that's one of them we wanted to have.
Yep.
We wanted to offer a formal decision on the mental health tax.
Yes.
And Commissioner Warrenson asked for, we want to do some look over drug court. Those are three that I think we talked about on Monday. Okay.
Yeah, specific to the mental health tax, I didn't want it to go implicit
Right.
that we really should take a stand and
And-
say it one way
And
or the
I
other.
totally agree. Totally agree.
Okay.
So why don't we tackle, I think the 400,000 is probably a fairly easy one. I think you had a couple ideas on that. I mean,
Mhm.
I'd make it real simplistic, but go ahead.
Okay, so we did not.
And you are?
Oh, I am Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. And happy to be here. So we discussed not increasing the levy. That was approximately, the original proposal was 400,000. So that revenue has now been removed from our budget. It's not in the budget. And so as far as ideas for some ways to recoup that in other places, two areas, we can have some reductions in our general, and that's related to the general fund only.
Right.
And so one of the items that we also we have revenue that we probably are not recording or not putting in the budget right now. So it was brought to my attention by the treasurer that the ARPA funds that we currently have, the investment income on those is moved to the general fund at the end of the year. So it hasn't been budgeted. So that is one item for next year's budget. That's really, it's an item that will, as we eventually use those ARPA funds, that investment income will go down though. So it's not a long-term solution. But that's about $375,000 that I currently do not have in the budget.
Yeah.
So that's one.
So that almost covers
Right.
it right there.
So that's one item. And then also, another, area is currently we are transferring from the general fund $125,000 to help support the Expo Center. And an idea that I want to bring to your attention is that we could instead utilize the cumulative reserve fund, which the revenues from that are the lodging sales tax. And so those could be used in place of the general fund. And that's $125,000.
125 in the cumulative fund or 125 that we help support?
That we help support. And
So,
instead of
what's in
using,
the cumulative fund? Don't we have over roughly $500,000 in there?
yes.
Yeah, that's generated over time.
Right.
And those are lodging tax dollars
Gene
used
tax
for
dollars.
tourist type things.
Right. And they are stated that they have to be used for tourists. And they
So-
can be used for our own tourist facilities. So those are two ideas on the revenue side. And then I have a couple other ones. They do not impact any personnel or any benefits. And so I'll throw those out there if you'd like to hear them. A couple of them, one, we budget overtime to the tune of about $1.3 million in the general fund. I looked at our historical. We typically don't spend all of that. So it looks like we may be over budgeting our overtime. That makes sense. And so if we were to reduce that by 10%, you're looking at about $134,000, $135,000. And there are a few other items. If we were to look at some non-personnel budgets, for example, dues and subscriptions are $405,000. If we were to reduce those by just 10%, you're looking at $40,000. So looking at some very specific line items and asking departments to maybe cut those by 10% in those ranges could also bring us about half of the 400,000.
Okay.
And then another item is currently we have a security services contract for this administration building. And we could look at reducing the hours possibly on that. We've already reduced them once with the Friday hours. But we could look at some further reductions on days that we're not having, for example, on Thursdays when we don't have any
When we don't have public
public
meetings and stuff like
meetings.
that.
Mhm. And I anticipate we could reduce that contract by about $50,000 annually.
Okay.
So those are some of the ideas that I looked at, not impacting personnel or benefits.
I appreciate you mentioning those different options, and I'm particularly intrigued with the notion of over budgeting overtime. It seems to me that that is the fallback position when we cut staff. That was started back in the last recession, and we've always gotten used to it. Well, we've hired everybody back. The numbers, if you look at how many people we've hired, the employment numbers match what they were back before the Depression, before all those cuts happened. So it would make sense to me that that would particularly be one of the areas we ought to be able to cut back. Now, there are a few departments that are security related
Yes.
that probably shouldn't be touched because we have to have that security, but seems like in the other security positions, we ought to be able to put a 10% cut in budgeted overtime. Just as a kind of a reminder that, yeah, we shouldn't be using as much. And we haven't been. I mean, you said that that's one area that we're
Well, I first looked at what was our actuals, what was the pattern of trends. So
I agree. It looks pretty obvious that we can save that 400,000 without affecting any employees, or actually without it affecting the hires we gave.
Yeah.
In some areas.
yeah,
So
I have those numbers too, in case you're interested, because y'all had asked me, you had approved about, I think it was about $800,000 worth of new positions. And I did go back and fund 2 of those positions on law and justice because it had ample revenue stream. And then 1 position that was requested to be reactivated, and I moved that to the mental health tax. So.
well, and then a couple of them, I think one in your office and one down in the auditors, we almost had to because of additional mandates from
unfunded mandates.
our great folks up in Olympia, yeah. Any other discussion on that? Are you guys feeling
You might
fairly
wanna
good
make-
about that?
You might want to look at the note from Kaylee. She has the latest on the investment income.
Okay.
More than on the investment income, more than 761.
The current year.
Yeah,
But when I used my number, I said there will be some cash flow coming down next year. Plus, I'm not confident that the rates that we're seeing right now are going to stay as high as they are.
would hold there, yeah.
Right. So I did reduce my number from 22 was about 300 and I think it was 328,000 that we earned in interest income. This year, we're sitting at about a little over 700,000 this year.
Okay,
And that's for having most of that money already assigned to different projects.
Yeah.
It's the lag time
It's the
between
lag. It's the
saying
lag
go
time.
for it and getting the plans
Right.
done and the contracts out and all that. So
So I'm estimating that you're going to see a good chunk of the cash flow on that next year and the following year. So.
Yeah.
So I think I was conservative. You'll know that I will always be conservative.
actually, personal opinion, I think you've done a tremendous job with this budget. You walked into this place. I know your career in numbers, but not in so much in government numbers. So
Not in municipal government.
yeah,
right?
yeah. So in my view, you've done a tremendous job coming in here and doing it.
and you've almost got the bars code mastered, right?
I'm learning it every day.
Yeah.
Bars code is a state accounting system that is unique to Washington State that I've
Mhm.
heard is very complicated. And
So
I can't read those numbers.
So if you would like me, I can do, I'd start with some of the on the revenue side, putting those revenues into the budget as opposed to any of the cuts. And if we feel like we need to go the other route, I can do that.
You good with that?
Yes, but I still would kind of like the overtime cut.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that,
Okay,
as far as I'm concerned.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Let's open discussion on the mental health tax. Or do you just want,
So
Are
I
we-
think,
Am I
go ahead.
requesting, we made
Yeah.
budget where the tax sunsets in March, right?
I guess that's the question. We ask you to build us a budget with that sunsetting. So, and I think as Commissioner Mortensen pointed out, it's incumbent on us to be very transparent and let's make a decision up here that we're good with that or we're not good with that. And I agree with that.
well, I can start the discussion.
Yeah.
Actually, I move that we let the behavioral health tax expire and not go and renew it.
Okay. So it puts a motion on the floor and then it's open for discussion.
What is it spent on?
There's here. There's a number of things right now, and primarily it's dedicated for mental health treatment or programs in the county. There's funding allocated for different county departments to utilize for different types of mental health or substance use related programs or services.
So is it mental health like schizophrenia and depression, and somebody wanting to jump off of the bridge? Or what exactly is it for? Is it for versus substance abuse? I mean, what's it? Mental health anymore. People, it seems like it's just a basket that everybody just wants to say, oh, that's mental and this is mental. So what is mental?
Well, right now it breaks down, probably a big part of it is drug court.
Okay.
A part of it is in our corrections, in our jail facilities. We have, funding that goes over there because we ended up housing, with the inability to get people into Western State, or the lack of beds, or however you want to put it. We ended up housing a lot of that. And so we spent some money over in our jail facility for that.
Wouldn't it be better to have rose-colored glasses on here? Wouldn't it be better to have a building for the mentally ill and keep the people that are offenders separate? Wouldn't that be the ideal thing? I mean, when I took the city.
Yeah, if you're just asking, my
Uh-huh.
opinion would, just as this one commissioner's opinion, yeah, I would be more in favor of that, yes. But, there's a lot of steps to get to there.
I feel that drug court has been a benefit to the county, and I don't want to see that go away. And like I said, with rose-colored glasses, as far as the jail and that judicial system, I would like to see mental health have a separate facility, because there's a difference between substance and abuse and somebody with a bunch of voices in their head that need to be under medication and supervised to make sure they take their medication so they are a productive member of society instead of scary and violent. So how much?
One of the other features that is funded is something called medically assisted treatment. That's drug related for those who are on drugs. And the experience has been, they go to jail, they go through withdrawal, and they're even more expensive to take care of because of the hospitalization that happens. So several years ago, we started offering that medically assisted program, particularly if people are on that, they're on a treatment program, they do something stupid, go to jail, and then they go cold turkey and they get bailed out.
Talking about heroin and fentanyl use and the heavy stuff that they can't just go cold turkey on. They need to have drugs.
Need a treatment
to
program.
Treatment program.
Yeah.
And that was part of drug court.
It's an additional service that this program pays for, administered at the jail. So drug court doesn't do the jail stuff. It's to keep people out of jail. So that's an important program for diversion and getting them into treatment. The MAT is kind of solving what turns out to be an emergency that occurs inside the jail. Yeah, in a way that's less.
The jail is no longer the jail. It's a babysitting facility to get people off of drugs. And ideally, it would be better to have.
I'm not sure babysitting is really the right word. It's an unlicensed mental health facility. That definitely is true. And any program that we can do to help deal with their disability is going to be helpful. They need to pay for their crimes. That's true. But oftentimes it's short-term stays while bail is being set and all that. So in the meantime, there's loss of control. So that helps. Also at the juvenile center, there's a mental health specialist that is there to deal with them. The real challenge that we have, and you've kind of hinted at, is we have a juvenile center that doesn't have very many kids, but the state law requires us to have it open 24/7. And
the state,
yeah,
again,
once again,
it'd be nice if when they mandate it, they'd have the funds come back to us to pay for it.
So to be honest, I remember that when, in the middle of my teaching career, the juvie was most often used to deal with truancy.
Mhm.
And the numbers were much higher. And so the law made a little bit more sense. Well, then they changed the law, and truancy isn't that much of it. That's not the remedy that juvie serves now. So we have an underutilized facility on that. But nevertheless, those that are in, there's a high degree of significant mental illness disease. So we have been funding, I think, one FTE to satisfy that need.
Was this a sales tax then, right? It was an attachment on the sales tax? with the
1/10
funds?
of 1%.
1/10 of 1% was instituted, I think, in 2012 or 13. And it was set up with a sunset. I've asked a couple times, but it's been unclear as to why they put a sunset on it. And usually there's one or two reasons a board does that. One is that they know other funding is coming and it should be sufficient. The other is it's something new. We want to take a look at it at this point in time. Is it working before we keep it going? And it's been
I asked-
unclear as to what the,
I asked one of the commissioners
Yeah.
why, who was on the commission. I says, how did we get this sunset? And he says, it was the price exacted by one commissioner to get his vote.
oh, it was
It's
games.
as simple as that. Yeah.
Before I lose you, because I know you got to get, what's it mean? I mean, if it doesn't, it's built up, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've thought I've heard you guys say that we have enough funds in that it would pay existing programs through 25?
Correct. So we have built in, and it's sort of reflected in the spreadsheet for 24 and 25. So if, as the board had suggested, we assumed the tax would expire in March. So there's no revenue factored in here beyond March of 24. With the funds that we have in the reserves, we could continue to fund what we're currently funding through the end of 25 and anticipate a balance even of about 1.7 million remaining.
At the end of 25. And
Mhm.
under your present knowledge, and I know we're early in the game of the opioid
Mhm.
settlement, are there costs that currently come out of this that would also fit under that?
I do think there's a pretty good connection with a lot of what is funded here with the opioid settlement dollars. And we could certainly look more closely at that and get some legal opinion on it too. But looking at the 17 pages of allowable uses for the opioid settlement funding, I think a lot of it has a decent connection.
Okay, and the third thing I would ask, and I don't know that you have an answer to this, I know there's funds that come down from the feds for court activities, drug court activities. Have we ever tapped any of those?
Adam would know more. I know a long time ago, there was a federal grant that I think ended up going away. And I'm not sure about those opportunities since then.
I saw a number here of like, I think 40 million or something from the feds, and Biden was saying he was going to raise that. So I think there's federal funds available too. I'm not sure how you tap any of that. Denise, is that okay? Yeah.
And if I do sneak out, I'll I can get on Zoom and just listen in. So.
Thank you, Commissioner. Adam Pitham, Program Manager for the Therapeutic Courts. The grants from the federal level are generally for starting or adding on to. They don't support existing programs. So back in 2010, a grant was started at a 3-year grant that built our program. That ended in 2013, and we continued funding with the 1/10 of 1%. So the 1/10 of 1% was implement in part to support the continued level of that our therapeutic courts were at, the drug court was at. Since then, we've added on mental health court. And yeah, at the time that was passed, I believe the one commissioner wanted the sunset in there so that in 5 years they could kind of evaluate how programs were doing, and with I think the intent to pass it or not, and then it's continued to be kind of kicked down the road.
Gotcha.
since then.
Okay, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, thank you.
I would, we in some sense put the cart before the horse a little bit in the sense that, these are actually two independent decisions, whether we want drug court and the tax, but everybody thinks they're tied together. And that's just one of those things where if you make sure you have a clean interface, a clean understanding, you'll come up with a better decision. You got a hand up?
Go ahead, Tricia.
Hi, this is Trisha Rodman, and I just wanted to touch on the whole MAP program in the jail. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but how much money, if you know, are we giving that program to be ran in the jail? Do you have that?
We're taking a look here.
Okay.
It's about $400,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's quite a bit of money. And I agree with the lady who was speaking before about utilizing the jail space for our mental health and drug addicted individuals, because often they take up one cell, right? Especially the ones that are in the secure setting that normally house multiple offenders. And if we had another space for them or another building, then what you could do is contract with an organization that can bill insurance, because once they go into jail, they lose their benefits, right? And
Well,
so
if they're on Medicaid.
yes, correct. If they're on Medicaid, but we can start them on the MAP program. I'm saying we, but it's not we, but they can be started on the MAP program. However, they're not getting the SUD professional. So the substance use disorder professional and all that treatment, they're just getting medication. And from an individual who I was helping, who was incarcerated, and I had to bring this up to Marin, and who took it to the medical director of whoever they contract with, he was sent home with way too much medication. And I had the mother bring it back. I mean, that was a huge liability for the county. And I won't go into detail with that, but it was not good. And so I just think that with that $400,000, if that could be put towards, and I know, like Arn said, it's two separate things, you know, that we're talking about drug court and the mental health tax. But if that was put towards a facility, then that can be ran to help those individuals. We would be able to house more offenders, and then we could treat the whole person in the facility rather than just provide a medication. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Yeah.
So I've been arguing against this tax for a while, and rather than just tell you guys all the things that I've said before, I just want to say, you know, it's like this thing is funded through 2025. That's what you're saying, right? I mean, you know, this is a tax put on the people without a vote, right? Why can't you let it sunset? If it's something that's necessary, it looks like there's a lot of time where you could draw up something and put it before the people. And if the people would want it, they could continue with it like it should have been in the first place. So, you know, I would say the sunset, you know, it's not anybody's getting a big chop. You know, you're through till 2025. In the meantime, if there's something more that's needed, there could be something drawn up about it, and it could be put before the people. That would be my point. And I won't belabor you with all my other arguments.
Well, Tim, I actually agree with you on that. I think we should we should let the people have an opportunity to vote. So I would like to amend the motion to direct staff to prepare an advisory vote for November of 2024 on re-implementing the tax or not.
So then the motion would be to let it expire with the amendment that we would put it on, put to an advisory vote in November.
Did you say advisory vote or a binding vote?
Well, I mean, we don't have the binding votes. I don't think that's the state doesn't allow us to do that.
So-
Advisory votes basically the same.
So the public would tell us, we'd basically be asking the public, what do you want us to do?
Right.
Is that what?
Right.
Okay.
Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. I know we've looked into this a little bit. If the tax expires and a future board looked at re-implementing the tax, we would look at some supplanting language and things if there was interest in sort of putting mental health tax dollars back into programs that were funded. We'd have to look at that a little bit. The other piece I wanted to mention with the opioid settlement money before I scoot out is we don't know exactly how much that really is at this point. We've started receiving payments from the first settlement, but we know there's a second settlement in the works. And so we don't really have a good idea of what those numbers would be. So while I think there's connection with the uses, the amount of funding is a different topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got an ample amount in the reserves from this fund though, to handle us for the next couple of years. Even if we
Yeah.
can't make up with the,
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and just to comment on the supplanting language, our attorneys have looked at that fairly closely, and the language is so loose that
Yeah.
I wouldn't
was
be
my
concerned
impression
at all
too.
about it.
Yeah.
that was my
And-
impression.
And I I like Dennis's thought, and I'd probably take it one step further is I'd really like to look at what we're going to ask from voters, because I listened to Tricia, and I've listened to some other people say about the mental issues that we deal with and having a facility. Some of those ideas should just be maybe hammered out and the public have a chance to tell us what we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only reason I'm speaking, it's about the caution. I would favor handling the problem, and building an institution is a way to do that. But that's where I start to choke at the price that it must be and the obligation it must be. And then I would ask, I forget which facility, probably Adam knows, there was a facility up around Tacoma that was closed, a hospital, closed this year sometime. There's a lot of complications with that. And it was closed, I think, partly as a result of changing regulations. Imagine
Yeah,
that.
imagine that. Okay, so just so I'm clear here now, we have a motion on the floor to let this sunset. It's been amended to ask staff to prepare an advisory vote for next November for the public. So that's what's on the floor right at the moment. Okay, good.
I just like to say that I agree that it should sunset. It was a good idea, whoever put that in, because based on conversations I've had with Adam, the program director, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there was only 8 people who graduated last year, the drug court. And there was only 15 that were on schedule to graduate this year. For such a small amount of people that are being helped, where at the same time, there's lots of people that are struggling with groceries, and to buy gas. I have friends that are on fixed incomes and they are really struggling. So I think the tax should go away.
I would repeat my admonishment. That's a different decision than we face at the moment.
I would like to respond to that. Graduation is not the only thing that we do. We have 94 people currently in drug court. You cannot separate the impacts of the pandemic and the Blake decision, which brought our numbers down drastically. We are now up without any concerns as to where we're at. The numbers are rising, the graduations are rising. The year before the pandemic, we had 35 graduations, and that's with comparable numbers where we're at. So this is playing catch up to the pandemic. So I just want to make that clear.
Okay. I'm looking, just taking a brief scan for hands. Any other comments on the motion? Okay, I'd call for a vote. Those in favor?
There,
Gonna do the
which
amendment
motion?
The amendment, sorry. Okay. Any other comments on the amendment to the motion?
Okay, and the amendment to repeat is to modify that to just to add the clause direct staff to prepare an advisory vote in
Advisory
24.
vote in November is what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what we're voting on, the amendment. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay, then that brings us to the original motion, which is now to let the tax sunset with the amendment that there will be an advisory vote in November. I don't see any hands. I call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Also vote aye. Thank you. Last,
And Mr. Chairman, just a clarifying question. Your understanding is the intent of this board is to continue the programs out of the reserves.
well, I know that we have the funds to continue the programs out of the reserves. I think there was Commissioner Mortensen want to have a discussion on the program, which is, I think, certainly warranted. That's what we do. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so next is drug court. I did want to have a discussion, and
Yeah.
we've beaten that to death, it seems like. I wanted to make sure that it was all out in the open and then clearly vote made. I have severe misgivings about that, but I also have severe misgivings about is drug court taking from the universe to take care of some, I'll say it pejoratively, some recalcitrant individuals. And I think there's nothing about drug court specifically, how they handle things. I think they do the good things because their obligations and their consequences for not behaving properly. But I just have a problem with the uniform application of law and all that kind of stuff. So that's already been said. What I would suggest right now is that we tighten a little bit. I do not like to stop programs cold turkey. We have the funds there. I would like at least something or some discussion that says drug court will supply us some real numbers with real history in there. They'll have to go back and do some little research there, but if they expect drug court to continue, we've got to have evidence that the public somehow is being helped, not just 90 individuals or, well, how many people? 25 people a year.
Thank you, Commissioners. Judge Basher, presiding judge for Superior Court. First off, I'd like to extend the court's real high level of offense this discussion today. We weren't given the courtesy of a phone call or an email that this was even being discussed today. We found out because someone else called us and said, gee, they're talking about drug court. We didn't get anything from anybody until we inquired. And I think that is really a lack of respect for an equal branch of government. That's offensive. And you all should seriously consider that. We don't do things like that.
Judge, I gotta pipe in here because the last time we had discussion on drug court and you were over here, you came up here and you blasted me for having you over here. You said
I did.
you wasted
did.
our time bringing you over here.
I
So
spent
now you're
12 hours.
blasting me for not having a formal invite out. You can't have it both ways. Let's
So-
show a little respect here. We didn't
showing
mean to
you-
exclude you. This was a deal that strictly was on budget to begin with. And if
If you're
you all
talking
showed
about,
up, that's your prerogative.
if you're talking about axing or changing a major court program without getting any input from the bench and giving us any notice of that discussion, that's a problem.
We had the same
We
discussion before.
came
and you
over,
didn't care for it before.
I've spent 12 hours sitting here presenting budget to this
You're
commission.
gonna come here and blast us. I will come back.
I'm happy to have that discussion.
Yeah.
I just simply have, it's just improper to have that discussion without at least giving us a heads up.
I
It's
think
a budget discussion.
if I may, what I'm really looking at here is the bottom line. Once we approve the bottom line, I think you folks allocate your resources as you see fit, and there's nothing the board can do about that.
I understand that, and Commissioner, I listened to your opening. That's the reason I came up here. We've supplied the commission with data going back to when we started this program, as far back as we have. We've given the data that is used nationally. We've given statistics. We've given studies. So it's really concerning when we hear statements that say, well, we haven't gotten any information about this program. There's more information about drug courts in general and our drug court program that's been given to this commission than probably any other program this county supports. So I know you don't like those numbers, but we've given you those numbers. We've given you numbers we have.
It's not that I don't like the numbers. I don't trust the numbers. I don't think they're holistic. It's a person that, this is sort of maybe an ancillary issue to it, but if somebody graduates through drug court, I want to know where they are the following year and 4 years later, 5 years later, just so we see, did we really fix a problem or did we just put a stopgap in there? And I don't think you've ever given me any data of that kind. I don't know, these people who have gone through drug court have cost the taxpayer a fortune. Okay, that's done. It's a sunk cost, but then the claim is that they become valuable members of society. So I'm asking you to show me that they're taxpayers and they're actually doing their part. From outside, people take a look and they say, we're losing the war on crime, period. And drugs are always blamed for it. And I'm still asking, like, the opportunity cost. We've got to do something different because this is not going very well for us. We got about 50 years of history on that. And I'm just asking for the court to help us.
I believe we gave that information. Am I correct, Adam?
How many numbers? How big was the universe of the numbers that you reported about the? In how many years?
We asked the subset of people that we could reach, but we have a limited ability to reach them. So.
Yeah, so I'm saying, how do we make logical decisions when our data is so sparse?
You know, I heard the talk on the data, so I went and I looked for data. And you know what? It's all over the board. There's some, here's one conclusion. Drug courts reduce drug arrests and rearrests for nonviolent drug-involved offenders. Because they're resource intensive, they may be better reserved for more complex cases. Experts divided on drug court effectiveness. Studies conducted of drug court graduates do not control groups to compare results against. They only include successful graduates. One study in Massachusetts in 2018 said after a 2-year period, recidivism jumped to 50%. And there's other things that say, yeah, it looks like it's down 7. What I'm telling you, it's all over the board. There's no conclusive study that says it does this. One in Baltimore said, and this was a 15-year study, drug treatment court did not have a significant effect on total days of sentence incarceration, nor did it have an impact on mortality risk. So the argument that it saves money, they're saying it doesn't. But there's other articles that say, yeah, recidivism is down. One down in Oregon said the cost, it saves about, I think their figure was $2,000 per person versus drug court or sending them to jail. I mean, it's just, there's nothing conclusive. So if you tell me there's conclusive evidence, I'll show you all kinds of stuff that says it's not. So I think having a discussion on it is certainly valid, because, and to ask and say, okay, if we can't get conclusive evidence, then for us to say, well, okay, what do we need for us then to make that decision? And I'm not opposed to it. I've told you, I've had a nephew gone through it, although I think this nephew, knowing him, he would have straightened up either way, but it certainly helped him. And I've seen people help, and I've told you that. But I'm just telling you can't sit there and tell me there's conclusive evidence, because I can sit here and show you that it's all on both sides too. And that's what I think Commissioner Mortensen is looking for. And I would like to have something a little more concrete myself.
Did you?
I tried to look up and see, because there's like the stats I can get, there's not every city, not every county has these things. I think the figure I have is around 3,000 or so around the United States. Well, I would like to see, is the crime rate in the places that have them, is it down versus those that don't have them? Is the cost down in those versus that don't have them? But it's hard to find that data. I don't even know where
Did you review through the studies that we had done on our program specifically that were done at the county expense?
I looked at the stuff Adam gave us. Yeah, absolutely.
So
and Adam admits it's pretty new data. We're still collecting.
No, this goes back to the beginning when we had the funding to have a researcher to study the program, to make sure we were following the fidelity of the program, and to report back to this body the results. And we did that, I believe, every 3 years. So there should be at least 3 reports like that, I believe. I think there were at least 2, I think 3 of those studies that were provided. We've not continued that because that was not at the pleasure of the board to have that researcher, is my recollection.
And the common issue with every one of these is there's no tracking. They estimate, and I think we're probably close to the same, about a 50% dropout rate, and there's no tracking of those people and the costs and stuff to that. Because it is more labor intensive to run somebody through drug court. You got more of your judge's time. I mean, it's what it is. It costs more to do that. And it just, I agree with Commissioner Mortensen that it's tough to get data and we need better data. And I don't know that I have the answer for you. And I'm sorry I don't have the answer for you, but I can tell you, because I've looked, there's nothing out there that's conclusive. There's parts that'll tell you get rid of them. There's parts that'll tell you they're doing work. There's one that says we want to get rid of them because we don't think there should be any law against drugs, and we have set up treatment centers instead of courts. So I mean, there's different motives for what they want, but I don't know.
And well, if the board wants more data than we currently collect, and we collect a lot of data, and we've, I believe, provided that data, I guess we need to know what it is you want, what format that is. We can see if that's even possible with what the data collection system that we have is. We can give you the data, whatever data we have, we're happy to give you. And I think we've done that.
There's one that said they estimated cost per drug court attendee of about $4 per person. And I don't know how that works out over a lifetime, but but there is a savings there. But for people that are incarcerated and go through the incarcerated program, it's between 2 and 6. So I don't know the difference between the two programs, or if these people are all wet or they're not all wet. So
But I don't have that number specifically in my head, but it's around 80% that have recidivism that go through the institution. Around, I believe it was about 14%. Is that right for our program, I think?
yeah,
So it's a significant reduction in recidivism, which is. the
well,
goal.
and the studies are all over the board on that too.
One of the things that I get a little concerned about is this concept of making the perfect the enemy of the good. The perfect standard is we eliminate the drug problem, we eliminate crime, we have a perfect society. That's not going to happen. We should be able to support programs that move us towards the goal, that make a difference in people's lives. And it seems like our drug court, while it's not perfect, it does deal with human beings, is a net improvement over not having any court program. What would be interesting is to find out what we do that makes us more successful than some of those that have a bad reputation, because it is staff labor intensive. That means the quality of those individuals make a huge difference in the effectiveness.
But
and so I don't know how you quantify that, but it would be important
A lot of it's
to be able to kind of support, to validate the Cowlitz County way of doing things.
But see, I can't even, I would love to agree with you that having any program is better than no program, but I can't get even stats on that. I mean, I can't see a county that says we don't have a program and our issues are this compared to we have a program and our issues are this. I mean, I can't even find that type of thing. You would think. If I was implementing a program, I always go back to banking because that's what I did. And I said, I wanted to try something in one of my branches. We're going to try this here. We're going to see how it works, and I can compare it to others and see how that does. And at least you'd have somewhat of a model, and you say either it gets worse, it gets better. Is it worth doing? We can't do. There's nothing I can find, or nothing I was able to find that can compare cities or counties or even states.
Of course we always have to deal with the changing drugs that are the current vogue.
Yeah.
As well, and that all changes how you treat.
I know I sound like I'm against it, and I'm really not. I think it has value because I believe when people make the decision to get help, we have, in my mind, we have the responsibility to help them when they make that decision. I say it all the time. It's not a one-way street. We can't force people to get help, but when they've decided to get help, then we need to help them down that path. So it's not that I'm anti drug court. I just, if you come in here and start blasting me for things, and I'm going to come back and yeah.
Yeah, if
So
I,
in public health, they have contact tracing as a way of finding out where the diseases go, and I'm wondering if, well, what is needed rather than taking staff time from clients and working with clients. Maybe it's one of those situations where we contract with a data researcher, I don't know, epidemiologist, and give them the task. And spend the time it takes to go back and research where all these people are, set something to give us a little bit more information to kind of create the narrative. We're doing it right. We don't know about those other folks, but we're doing it right.
I could be brutal. If I could be brutally honest, I've been asking for this, for data and since 2017. And I'm not going to go to your office and sit down and lay out the plan for you. I'm just going to say, I am reasonably decently educated. I can look at data and I can tell whether it's real or not real, but I can't make up the data and I don't have the bandwidth to go find the data. I count on you to do that, you meaning the other agencies. So I've been asking for this stuff for all across all the departments for a long time. And so it's a little disingenuous to plead, like, in how many years has drug court been around? And we got 49 numbers after more than 20 years in operation.
Well, we've got a lot more numbers than that, and we provided a lot more numbers than that.
Well,
That's the
yeah.
specific number that was requested most recently, and Adam put in some time to do that. When we first got the federal grant to do the to build the program, part of that grant required us to hire a researcher as part of that grant program, who tracked the program, collected data, analyzed the data, provided a report after 3 years. We provided that to this commission. We continued after we went off of that federal grant because that was a requirement for the federal grant. The commission at that time wanted to continue that, so we continued that same researcher to continue doing the studies, to track people, to see what data was available. And then we produced other reports. I think Commissioner Weber, you've seen at least one or two of those reports. And the last time I believe we stopped doing the research because that was not something that was in our funding. If we have a researcher, if we want a contract, we're happy to do that. That's not an issue.
No, it's
but I
incumbent
think
upon you to do
to
it because
our-
you're the one that said you want this program. And you're really trying to build it up, expand it. So it's up to you to provide the evidence, but it's got to be real evidence. You know, we're faced with arguments all the time, like our school systems are wonderful. We got 98% graduation rate. Things aren't working well. Well, show me numbers that I can really sink my teeth in.
I guess, Commissioner, I believe we've done that, but you don't believe we've done that. We disagree on that. We've given you a lot of numbers over the whole course of the program. And
we would need to discuss things, but I don't recall a time when Adam has come over or called me up and said, hey, Mortensen, you seem to be a big pain in the ass. Can you come over here and help me figure out what it is you want? I'm always willing and available on that stuff. I'm trying to remember, there was a presentation by a professor from
Portland
Portland.
State.
Was that you?
It wasn't me, but it was Portland State gave a presentation.
Yeah, but was that for the court, for?
Yeah, I'm going to have Adam come up. He can give you more data about that.
Yeah, that's the fellow. So when he spoke here last time, that was on behalf of the drug court?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't recall any details because my mind doesn't work that way. I captured the essence of it and I thought that was a sham. I really thought it was badly done. The chairman actually presented a concept that I think is excellent. A control group. Whenever we do these kinds of things, we need a control group. He offered the counties that don't do a drug thing to look at. If you're really interested in these things and really trying to find out whether you're really doing the right thing in general, there's a lot of work to be done. If you really want to say, I helped this one person, that's easy, but at what cost?
Right. As far as control groups, and I'm interested in looking at it, the difficulty is finding people that would have been eligible and didn't do the program.
That's why big numbers are good.
Yes. I will say a year and a half ago, we were on a staff meeting on Zoom and had a conversation about what data you would like to see. And that's what I incorporated into the data that we presented last summer. I would have liked to have larger numbers, but I was very limited in how I could reach people because people move on.
Yeah.
So I was able to collect what I could collect from that. We have established an alumni group that is meeting regularly. We hope to use that as a networking system to be able to reach more people, to be able to continue to collect that data. I would be happy to re-engage with Nick, but you didn't seem to received the information he gave very well. So maybe we could look into another researcher that could look back even farther as far as that. I'm interested to know what data presents. I'd like to be able to pivot and dodge and make our program the best that it can be. We do, as part of our program, there are best practices that are put out by the National Association of Drug Court Professionals. We follow those to the best of our ability. It's very comprehensive, and there's also key components of a drug court that you have to follow to even call yourself a drug court to be considered that, which we follow those. So there are areas we're always looking at what we can implement and where we can improve. We're not meaning to keep data from you. I with the data that I was presenting this past summer, I thought I was presenting what you wanted. I would have liked larger numbers also.
And I
it's-
complimented you on that.
Yes, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There's nothing I'm hiding. It's gathering data is labor intensive. We did that within our office ourselves, putting that together, reaching out. But yeah, I want you to see the good of our program. I mean, I know that we have a lot of anecdotal stories, and I will point out that data is nothing but anecdotal evidence that is put together to see a pattern. And I think that there is a pattern and a community of people in recovery because of drug court and because of people that have been in drug court. I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just say, I don't doubt your honesty and sincerity, and we've talked various times about other things. I don't have a problem
And I
with it. There
appreciate
is
that.
nothing that concerns me there. What does concern me is that whenever we do a program, we really should put an effort in there to figure out, are we part of the problem or part of the solution? But we get stars in our eyes about we're going to save the world, we're going to do this and that, and we don't look at the big picture. I did write stuff up that I'm sure you've seen, and I've never gotten a fundamental addressing to some things like, how is this equal treatment under the law? And your program is really good. In fact, Judge Evans was sitting right there, and I asked him, why not offer that up without having someone to commit a crime in order to get into program?
Because of the Constitution. I mean, we can't. We have no authority over anybody that hasn't committed a crime.
Correct, but you haven't, but if you're going to go away from strict legislation of the law, then this sort of excursion should include you being able to speak to other people and say, we have a program, and try to get that going. But I don't think that's
If
happened.
there's a possibility to run a program, I've always said there's no competition in helping people. We have our niche that we help. It's restricted to those who have a criminal case and meet the requirements of the program. If there are other tools out there, I'm all for them. I think this is a comprehensive thing to address. We are on the front lines, like I've said before. The problem with the border, with the fentanyl coming into our country and our communities, that's devastating. That's devastating to me. I hate seeing it to our clients, but there's nothing here in Cowlitz County that I can do about that problem. I can only address the issues as are presented here in Cowlitz County with the clients that we are able to reach.
Right, and that's all I can ask of you, and you can ask of us. I
Yeah.
agree. You've all heard me say before, because of this problem, the only way is legalization of drugs. You can't get there from here. If this is the legalization, you're here. You can't get there in any finite amount of time without causing tremendous havoc.
Yes, and even with the legalization of drugs, the crimes that come with them don't diminish. Most people we don't have anyone.
What crimes?
Theft, property theft, taking motor vehicle.
Wait, let me challenge you there. I am told time and time again that people who are addicts commit crimes to support their habit.
Yes.
Opium grows on plants, not trees.
Well, decriminalizing drugs doesn't necessarily make it accessible to people. I mean, we even still see crimes involving marijuana, even though it's legal in our state. It's
What kind of crimes are you talking?
Well, there are restrictions on grows on it. There are crimes that there's theft involved with it. There are crimes that are associated with substance use that won't go away with the legalization of it.
Yeah, it's a longer discussion, but neither of us is swayed one way or the other on that.
I can agree to disagree with you on that. I mean, we don't really have a system to.
And we
to
can't
check
change it,
that.
yeah.
I mean, you look at Oregon, who has all but decriminalized, and there's still a lot of street crime, street level crime going on.
Yeah, I saw some of the stuff on TV with the flames and the gunshots.
Yep. Mhm.
I think Judge Evans was trying to stand up before to speak. Is it permissible to have a bow tie?
I hope so. I hope so. So just to avoid meeting creep, my understanding is the reason we're here today is to talk about budget and dollars and allocation of dollars for the 2024 budget and how that impacts drug court. Is that accurate? Is that why we're here? I don't know why we're here.
No, the issue was to figure out the 400,000 check done.
Shortfall.
Yeah, the behavioral health tax done. And now it's the drug court. What I wanted to do is put pressure so that we can figure out whether we're doing the right thing or not. The only pressure handle we have on you is the budget.
Right.
When we approved the budget on the 19th,
Yes, yes.
so the bottom line now reflects a full-fledged drug court. And I'm not sure that's the right thing to do, but I wanted to have a discussion in public so that we could actually take a crack at it. And despite the misfiring here about the offense, no one here intends to offend anybody. But I think this is a good discussion that we should have. We should have these kinds of discussions more frequently to check on each other.
Sure.
You've heard me scream before when there were only two commissioners trying to push decisions off until we could get a third commissioner or the commissioner was out, come back, because I don't like a veto power when there are only two of us. So, I want things to be amply understood. That's really all I've ever asked for. And in here, I think it's been taken for granted that we just continue these programs ad infinitum. Reminds me of Ronald Reagan saying, what's the nearest thing to eternal life but a government program?
So the purpose of the discussion today is not necessarily dollars for drug court because that's already been approved. And the discussion is focused on wanting more justifying data.
No, the dollars haven't been approved.
Okay, I thought,
And they get approved on the 19th,
okay, I mistook I got the wrong month. I was thinking November.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
December.
All right. So with that understanding, so the $400,000 shortfall has been addressed. Is there a discussion related to reducing funding for drug court or just, is that on the table?
Good question. I'll just blurt out. I don't know what my colleagues think. There was a mention that you're not paying me to collect the data is really what I summarize, what I basically heard from Adam. And I'm saying, because I don't like stopping programs instantly kind of thing and so forth. And I would like drug court to give us the data and realize that we're not a rubber stamp. We really need to know. And I don't know whether we check the bottom line this year, but next year we might, if we don't get good results. Now, my colleagues might say, well, that's too lenient or that's too harsh. I don't know, but that's my least aggressive stance, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Okay. That's helpful for me. I appreciate that.
Well, your question's spot on. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and from our perspective, we're in this world of due process. Every single day we're in due process. Notice, opportunity to be heard, preparation. So I think that's where Judge Basher expressed some of his frustration, because that's how we think, that's how our brain is wired. And so when I come here today, I don't know why I'm here today, so I appreciate the clarification. So that really helps. Let me just, I just wanted to add just a comment to Commissioner Dahl. I really appreciate you digging into different studies and data. I think that's admirable and good. and it worries me that if I'm all of a sudden learning about oceanography and I want to learn more about acid rain, I start digging into studies and I can cherry pick and I can find things that will support a particular position if I'm not in favor of it. And then if you dial down, it becomes really difficult for a neophyte like myself to understand oceanography and the impact of acid rain on it. And if I'm just skimming the top, I can find a lot of stuff and my thoughts may not be fully developed. I went recently to a training for 130 drug court judges across the nation. There was a WSU, Washington State University professor, Jackie Van Warmer, who's kind of an authority on a lot of this. That may be a resource that we could tap into, even a conversation. She would be very open to that, and that may help a neophyte or somebody who's earnestly desiring to understand more about the issues to make sure you're going in the right path and not getting sidetracked by maybe smaller studies and maybe not meta studies that kind of accumulate data. So with that said, I'll take it as a compliment or a flattery that drug court gets a lot of focus. I think the funding that we receive is how much per year?
From the net.
Oh, everything. 700,000. So I'm just curious about other programs that get as much airtime and focus. Because I think that's a fair question. And I think it's a fair question that we ask, that you ask us that you focus on us. I think that's fair. If I was a citizen, I'd want to know how the dollars are being spent. My question is if other programs, other entities within the county are receiving kind of similar focus, and maybe there should be similar focus on them also, not to take the focus away from us, because I think that's fair. But it again, we come from this world of equal treatment and due process. And I may be wrong, but I feel a little bit singled out. And that's okay, because I'm fine to respond to it. But if the concern is saving dollars and making sure dollars are being well spent and justified, I would like to make sure that all programs have the same opportunity to justify themselves. So I'll just throw that out there, just kind of a fairness argument.
You remember the first part where you sat while we discussed the Frank Morrison thing.
Yeah.
Did you think that was not sufficient scrutiny?
I think it's great.
Right. I'm just saying, we're not picking on anybody in particular. And when I said I've been asking for the data, Gina James is not here, but she would say, yes, indeed.
So I'm a fan of Thomas Sowell. I appreciate him. Facts are critical. Addiction and what we work with drug court is it's a brain disease. It's persistent and recurring. It's similar to heart disease. You stop taking your medication, you're going to get sick again. It's similar to any health condition. And so when somebody's involved in treatment and then they go away from that treatment venue or provider or arena, things can certainly change. And so the long-term studies are important, but there's a lot of variables with that too. So I don't know. This is a proposal, just thinking out loud, as far as if data is king, and I think data is important. I know with our current staff, accumulating that data is difficult. So there may be a request for allocation for funds, whether it's an outside person collecting or an inside person collecting. I think that's a reasonable request to help justify. Just with our current staffing levels, they're pretty high. So we may make that a formal announcement later on, but just kind of throw that out there onto the table. Last thing I just wanted to mention is that I liken drug court to cars. They're expensive. They're consuming, depreciating assets, and they don't necessarily produce something directly. They help sometimes produce things indirectly, but they contribute to the deliverables. And so I think drug court is a vehicle. The continued funding of it and upkeep of it is important. And I just appreciate the opportunity to have the discussion, to hear your thoughts, for you to hear my thoughts, and to just get an idea where we're coming from. And just I'll end on this, is that I think there is a lot of science out there, and science is based on data. And I think the studies clearly show, meta studies clearly show that drug courts have a positive impact on society and individuals and families, which are precious and important to us. Thank you.
Let me, you know that the tobacco industry for years had scientists swearing smoking was fine. They had all the data in the world. You understand my problem.
Sure.
They're
You can do
in
with
the money
data.
train.
You can do with that or whatever you want to do with that.
When I recite $227,000 per year per fictitious family of four that the government has spent to eliminate poverty, I'm not suggesting that each family of four got $227,000. In fact, I'm sure they didn't, but we have a whole industry. And it's like the tobacco company. They're going to vote for their livelihood. And that's unfortunate that in my 75 years, I've gotten very jaundiced by listening to people who want to vote for something where they don't have anything at stake, or they want to press for something that it benefits them, but not everybody else. There just isn't a moral fiber out there that makes me comfortable.
I hear you. Thanks. I yield the floor.
And I'm glad you like Mr. Soul.
However you pronounce it, I like him a lot.
Steve, we've had a hand up. Can I go to that
Yeah,
first?
go
Are you
for it.
okay with that?
Yep.
Go ahead, Tricia.
I was just wanting to ask a question with the drug court. I'm certain there's like literature and statistics with SAMHSA, our federal organization for drug and mental health, and with that, I haven't checked to see if there is statistics for the drug court. But what if there was a questionnaire that was implemented for both mental health court and drug court? Like when the person comes in, when they first begin the intercourt, they have to answer these questions, and then at 6 months they answer the question, and then a year, and you're doing that to follow so you can get your statistics. Why? That would be really simple to implement. And you wouldn't really need, because it would be part of the process. And if you built a database to collect that information, I guess that's where the expense comes in. But there's entities out there that can do that for you. So that was, would that be
Tricia, yeah. I think that's the kind of data that is more easy to come by. It's the short-term data. And the challenge is it's the long-term data. What happens after 5 years? Does drug court make an effect 5 years down? And that population is so transitory, it takes an awful lot of work to track them down. And I think that's probably the glitch that we're going to have to solve. But like I said, public health has been doing stuff like that for years, contact tracing. So something similar to that may be necessary.
I think also drug court is a contract, isn't it, with the individual? And in that contract, you're holding a big hammer. You can put a clause in there that says, and you will remain available to us for periodic updates for some amount of time.
That's true.
Once their charge is dismissed, we have no more. I mean, it's in there, but there's no legal. I don't think there's any legal standing.
There are a lot of laws that are really complied to just because they make sense, not because they can be arrested. Yeah.
Does Clatsop County have a drug court?
Go ahead, Steve.
I guess I want to disagree strongly with how difficult it is to track people. With the background checks and stuff that are available online for a few bucks and a few minutes of people's time, especially, I got to imagine if they were in the criminal justice system in any way, shape, manner, or form, I suspect the drug court probably has their first name, middle name, and last name, maybe even their social security number. Hell, if they were in jail long enough, maybe their pant size. But I gotta believe if they got an address or any information and it's a minimal amount, maybe their social security numbers on file with them. A minimum amount of information, you can do a background check and follow on people for the last 20 frickin' years. It's easy to pull it up. It costs a few bucks for some of those more expensive background checks, but they're extremely efficient. They go back in years and yeah, okay, it'll take a few minutes for somebody to sit down and say, what about this guy or this guy or this guy? And maybe they got to pay, maybe there's HIPAA laws. They can't release names and information to have some other organization do it. Maybe they got to have the budget money to do it themselves. But I don't believe for 1 minute that they cannot do that in a very efficient manner if they put a little effort into it.
And resources.
And maybe they need some more resources. I don't know. That's, I guess, I'm very strongly of the opinion that if they're going to come and ask for money, they ought to be able to support it with data.
One study tracked criminal records for 15 years to see on participants to track them is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's if somebody gets arrested in California and they got an address that they know they came from Washington, I can't believe that they don't get a hold of the Washington criminal system and say, hey, has this guy got a background check? Has this guy got a problem? Is this a repeat offender? Has he been getting DUIs for the last 2 years? Now all of a sudden he's in California. There's no way, I don't believe that there's not a ton of information out there. And probably most of it gets checked every time somebody gets arrested. Somebody looks and see what kind of a record this guy's got. I imagine that goes right before the judge, before somebody walks into district court. Has this guy been here before? Has he been in jail in a different state? Has he served prison time? I can't believe there's not a hell of a lot of information readily available if somebody just looks.
Be careful, Steve. You're almost volunteering.
When
I don't have the business.
One of the things we mentioned and Judge Evans touched on it a little bit is like even-handedness. And during the COVID crunch, we saw businesses in town shut down, people losing their jobs. The best of my knowledge, drug court continued at a very diminished output, but no reduction in cost or anything like that.
The need for it,
Yeah.
as well as a reduction in resources spent during that.
To me, that's government accounting. You still kept your whole staff, right? Except you didn't fill a job that was, yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, when I came here and got into the government side, there were all kinds of strange accounting, like the budget return, all these people that had requests for employees for 5 years or 4 years on the books or something like that, that never had been filled, but we budgeted for it. I'm like, that's not a budget.
Go ahead.
I am for the drug court. I'm wondering if the funding sounds like you're getting federal funds for opioid use for fentanyl and whatnot, correct? You're getting some funding from the feds?
It's from a settlement. It's not from the feds, it's from a settlement.
So it's just a one-time fee type thing.
Well, it's a settlement that covers over 17 years. There's 17 years worth of payments in the contract.
317,000 was our share for the first year, right?
It's like 180,000 in one settlement, and we're estimating the other settlement will be about the same. It's $3 million over 17 years.
Yeah.
Well, the crisis actually has a lot to do with the homeless and the crime, and it's all tied together. So I would like to see that funds go to the drug court. And you have a motion on the floor. I understand that. We're talking on the motion.
No, I don't think so.
We don't have any motion.
We don't have a
on the drug court. This is-
We voted on all the motions.
Okay, you voted to let it sunset and then possibly pick this up again later.
Right.
Right. When it comes to drugs, these people are so, they're possessed. They're possessed by the drug. It's a demon drug. There's no gateways about it. They've gone down the hole and that's where they're at. And, the families kick their people out of their house because they're trying to do tough love, and it's caused a homeless problem. And then again, another bunch of crime. So the only intervention that you actually have is to take them before a judge and say, you're going to go through this program, or this is your last straw. We need to clean you up. You need to be a productive member of society, and the rest of us are going to judge you, because that's a lot of what's happened in this world, is that we don't judge anymore. There's no standards of bad behavior, and you shouldn't be doing this. So let's go back to the old, let's judge. Let's let the judges do their job and judge and try to clean these people up. I am for drug court, because there has to be a time when somebody says, you are a problem. You've created this yourself. You've made bad choices, continue to make bad choices. You need to start making good choices. Start here, and let's give you the tools to pull yourself out of this hole. So I'm in support of drug court.
I'm not totally sure where you guys want to go on.
I think the vote will actually happen on the 19th, unless somebody wants to suggest we change the bottom line
Okay.
on the
You-
Superior
you
Court
just
request.
Kind of wanted to air,
The final budget vote.
Right.
yeah, you just kind of wanted to air this out before we,
Yeah, I hope.
before the 19th.
Yeah, before the 19th. I thought that's why you wanted to talk about everything that was funded with the tax. Right. This is what's in all of this is in the budget, unless you
Right.
tell me otherwise.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Okay, and just Judge Evans suggested that maybe we ought to allocate funds for somebody to collect data and that kind of stuff. And I'm saying, no, that fund should be enough. I still expect other data.
Go ahead.
My name's Eric McCrandle. I'm a resident here in Cowlitz County. And I want to thank you for your decision earlier on putting it to the vote of the people about the tax. I think that's important, and I think the people should always have their say. So I don't know what I was gonna say up here, other than I sat here all this time, and now I want to talk. And you know, I don't know the numbers of everything, but I do know that, you know, as I look, and there's probably no way to calculate all the ways before and after drug court to get the numbers and to get of what it's really affected in people's lives. I'm for drug court, and I'm a graduate. You know, before that time, from 1995 to 2001, I was arrested 36 times. And a lot of that was probation violations and whatnot, but it's still, they still took me in, and it still cost the taxpayers of this county $100 a day back then to house me. I imagine it's much more than that now. And, you know, as I look back, you know, I owe the people of this county to stay clean for putting me through and paying for me that. And I've looked at that, and a bunch of my friends look at it the same way. And we've stayed clean. We've done what it takes to build an incredible life, a lot of us. And, you know, I'm like I said, I'm for drug court. You know, I'm a taxpayer here in this county. I own a home, and, you know, I give back every way that I can. And I mean, I don't know how much I've paid back to the community, but I bet it's a lot more, like 100 times more than what it took to put me through drug court. Easy. And you know, that's kind of just what I want to say is that, yes, that is important. Don't get me wrong. I live it. I know it every day. You know, I get it. But also I'm also in support of things that change people's lives for the better. And that's kind of where I'm at is, you know, this program for 20 some years has been changing people's lives. You know, today I got 22 years, 4 months and 19 days clean and sober, not one arrest. And, you know, I know there's more people out there just like me. And don't get me wrong, I know people have reoffended. I get it. And I just want to say that I encourage you to fund this program and to keep funding it because it changes people's lives and that's what matters. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know money matters too, but you know, there's a lot of people out there that this program is changing their lives. And, you know, I don't know, like I said, how much each person is paid back or what the numbers are. But I know that there's a lot of good being done with this program, and that's all I gotta say.
Well, I would suggest if somebody wants, I'm along the lines, it's in the budget and the money's there, then I'm going to leave it there. I mean, I'll certainly entertain ideas to the different, but I'm going to be along the lines that I'll leave it there. But I also want to say that I will help get data if you want my help, and I have no issue with that. Is it part of my job? No, probably not. But I don't have any issue helping with that, and I'll leave it at that. Okay. With that, hearing nothing else, we will adjourn. I lost $1.